Then I try. Then I open the meeting and the sitting is opened. The first item of business this afternoon is the debate on the report titled The Progress of the Assembly's Monitoring Procedure, January to December 2022, document 15682, presented by Mr. Pierre Fassino on behalf of the Monitoring Committee. In order to finish by 6 p.m., I will interrupt the list of speakers at about 5:55 p.m. to allow time for the reply and vote on the draft resolution. I call Mr. Fassino, Rapporteur. You have 7 minutes now and 3 minutes at the end to reply to the debate. The floor is yours, Mr. Fassino.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Vous avez reçu le rapport d'activité de la commission de monitorage de suivi pour le 2022. Pendant ces années, on a monitoré 11 pays comme la procédure de monitorage. Ils sont tous pays de l'Europe centrale et orientale. 3 pays avec la procédure de post-monitorage. Aussi, ces 3 pays sont pays de l'Europe centrale et orientale. Et 6 pays à travers la procédure de suivi périodique. 3 de ces 6 pays ont déjà complété la procédure, des autres 3, il est en cours. Dans le rapport, vous avez l'analyse pays par pays, que pour des raisons de temps, je vais résumer. Il faut souligner que tout ce qui est écrit pays par pays dans le rapport a été écrit sur la base des rapports qui ont présenté nos rapporteurs. Mais si on regarde tout le rapport, on peut constater qu'il y a des sujets qui sont communs. Dans tous les pays sur lesquels on a fait la procédure de monitorage, les problèmes principaux ont regardé le respect de l'état de droit, l'indépendance de la magistrature, la liberté des médias, la lutte à la corruption, les droits des minorités et le respect des règles politiques démocratiques entre qui a la responsabilité de gouverner et les partis d'opposition. Ce sont des sujets qui, partout, dans tous les pays qu'on a monitorés, ils se sont révélés être les problèmes principaux. Il y a dans tous les pays des progrès remarquables vis-à-vis des recommandations qui ont été faites par le Conseil de l'Europe et ses structures, mais il y a encore plusieurs éléments négatifs et des lacunes, et donc il faut continuer à travailler. Surtout, nous encourageons les pays qui ont été monitorés à respecter les valeurs et les droits qui sont à la base du Conseil de l'Europe, à accomplir les avis de la Commission de Venise qui a presque pour tous les pays nous donné des avis très importants. Nous encourageons les pays qui ont été monitorés à adapter sa législation aux critères, valeurs et aux droits du Conseil de l'Europe et aux indications de la Commission de Venise. Et enfin, à respecter et appliquer les sentences que la Cour des droits humains, les sentences de la Cour des droits humains. Pour 3 pays, il y a eu une procédure de post-monitoring, la Bulgarie, et on signale une situation politique très, très compliquée et très faible. La Bulgarie, dans les prochaines semaines, ira à la 5e élection en 3 années, dans un cadre d'instabilité politique qui nous inquiète. Le Monténégro, c'est un pays qui est en ce moment dans une crise politique institutionnelle très grave qui se signale pour les conflits entre le président de la République et le Parlement et à l'intérieur du Parlement entre les forces politiques. De plus en plus, en Monténègre, on ne réussit pas à donner de la stabilité politique et en plus, le conflit il s'est transféré dans les derniers mois sur la formation de la Cour suprême qui a aussi la responsabilité de veiller sur les processus électoraux. Ça signifie que si on ne va pas résoudre ce conflit sur la formation de la Cour, c'est difficile même de penser que le Monténègre peut aller à des élections parce qu'il manque le sujet qui est le sujet de la garantie. Et même la Macédoine du Nord, dans lequel il y a un conflit politique interne aigu qui affaiblit la stabilité de ce pays. Je vais aussi souligner la situation en Turquie. Si on peut considérer positif que le barrage, le niveau pour l'accès au Parlement a été réduit dans la loi électorale de 10 à 7%, mais il y a plusieurs choses qui nous rendent inquiets. L'application de la catégorie du terrorisme à tout ce qui s'oppose au gouvernement en charge, une attitude à contrôler les médias, à influencer la magistrature et à affaiblir sa indépendance, à ne pas appliquer les sentences de la CEDU, comme dans le cas Kavala, et en plus, la procédure qui a été mise en œuvre pour la dissolution du Parti démocratique du peuple, qui, comme vous savez, c'est le parti de référence de la majorité de la population kurde. Donc, nous pensons qu'il faut absolument solliciter, encourager la Turquie à respecter les règles et les critères qui sont à la base du Conseil de l'Europe. Aussi, on a fait la procédure de monitoring sur l'Ukraine, mais évidemment, la situation de guerre rend très difficile la vie politique et institutionnelle dans ce pays, mais il doit nous féliciter que même dans ce cadre si compliqué, l'Ukraine a ratifié la Convention d'Istanbul. Enfin, 3 pays ont été soumis à la procédure de suivi périodique. Malte, dans laquelle aussi il se pose des questions relatives à la lutte à la corruption, le respect de l'indépendance de la magistrature et la liberté des médias. Et la Roumanie, dans laquelle aussi, même s'il y a des progrès positifs, nous signalons qu'il est nécessaire de mettre en œuvre des mesures de lutte à la corruption plus déterminées et dans le même temps qu'il faut respecter l'indépendance de la magistrature. Je vais terminer. Nous n'avons pas fait seulement le monitorage, mais pour chaque procédure de monitorage, on a travaillé pour vérifier que les recommandations soient appliquées. Et enfin, je veux souligner 3 questions. Le problème, c'est que nous, la situation politique à l'intérieur et institutionnelle à l'intérieur de plusieurs pays nous sollicite d'avoir un temps plus large pour conduire les monitorages. On a besoin d'une majeure stabilité des rapporteurs. Pendant le 2022, 11 rapporteurs ont s'est démissionné et nous, on est obligés à nommer de nouveaux rapporteurs. Ça affaiblit nos travail. Et enfin, je pense qu'il faut en tout cas remercier tous les rapporteurs qui ont travaillé à différents rapports et solliciter les groupes politiques à donner une attention prioritaire à l'activité de monitorage et donc aussi à nous aider pour rendre plus stable et plus ferme le travail de notre commission. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Mr. Fassino. Then you have only small 2 minutes left to give comments later on. In the debate, I first call on the speakers on behalf of political group, and the first is United Left Hisyar Osoy from Turkey. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair, dear colleagues. Let me start by expressing my thanks to Mr. Fassino for this comprehensive report on a total of 17 member states who are under either monitoring procedure or post-monitoring dialogue and periodic monitoring. The report outlines major problems in these countries, recommends ways to address them, and concludes with suggestions to improve the monitoring capacity of the PACE. We support these recommendations, particularly those related to gender balancing and the selection of rapporteurs. Despite monitoring efforts of the PACE and other organs of this very council, however, there is clear decline in democratic standards in many member countries. The report underlines various symptoms of authoritarian rule that plague many member states. I do not want to use biological metaphors to address social and political issues, but a highly contagious and fatal disease is spreading across Council of Europe territories. And we are well familiar with the symptoms of this disease: destruction of independent judiciaries, corruption, centralization of power and destruction of parliamentary democracy, attacks on the civil society, destruction of the freedom of press, of expression and association, unfair elections, oppressing the political opposition, attacks on women, LGBTI people, immigrants, and other marginalized people. In a nutshell, almost every single value and pillar on which this council was built is under severe attack, and not from outside, like from Russia, but from inside, by many member states themselves. We should improve the monitoring capacity of the Assembly, of course, but I suspect this will do much in addressing these issues. The problem we have here is much bigger and graver. The fact is that more and more member states are persistently not fulfilling their obligations, systematically refusing to comply with the terms and conditions of membership, and depriving their own citizens of democratic rights. By not implementing court rulings, some member states, my own country, Turkey included, are setting very bad examples for others to follow. We need to urgently find ways to respond to such lack of political will and willingness among member states to comply with the terms and conditions of membership. With its institutional capacity, resources, and expertise, the CPT, the Venice Commission, GRECO, the Human Rights Commissioner, the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities, among others, this council can help to improve their democratic standards and human rights, but only if member states want it. We cannot force any member state to be a democratic one. We can only remind them that by choosing to become a member of this council, they have already made a commitment, a promise, and it is not too much to ask them to keep their promise by respecting and practicing the values and principles of this council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ozoy. The next speaker is Max Lux, Mr. Max Lux from Germany, representing the Socialist Group. The floor is yours.
Herzlichen Dank, Frau Präsidentin, meine Damen und Herren. Im Namen der Fraktion der Sozialisten, Demokraten und Grünen in dieser Parlamentarischen Versammlung möchte ich mich sehr deutlich mit meinem Vorredner und seiner Partei, der Oppositionspartei HDP in der Türkei, solidarisieren. Wir als Fraktion der Sozialisten, Demokraten und Grünen in dieser Parlamentarischen Versammlung sind erschrocken über dieses Verbotsverfahren gegen die HDP und halten es für unvereinbar mit dem Sinne dieses Europarates und mit dem Sinne der Europäischen Menschenrechtskonvention. Es darf nicht zu einem Verbot der HDP so kurz vor diesen Wahlen kommen. Für diesen Bericht, für den wir sehr dankbar sind, hoffen wir alle, dass er der letzte sein wird, der sich so gravierend mit den Menschenrechtsverletzungen in Staaten beschäftigen muss, auf deren Mitgliedschaft wir so stolz sind in dieser Organisation. Es sind nämlich nicht so sehr die Starken in unseren Gesellschaft, die einen starken Rechtsstaat, die eine unabhängige Justiz, die eine konsequente Gewaltenteilung brauchen, sondern es sind vielmehr die Schwachen, die das benötigen, denn sie sind diejenigen, die von autoritären Tendenzen zuerst und am schwersten gezielt getroffen werden und die von uns als Delegierte im ältesten Menschenrechtsparlament der Welt zu Recht erwarten, dass wir uns schützend vor sie stellen. Der Titel Fortschritt des Monitoring-Verfahrens der Versammlung mag in dem Lichte ganz schön abstrakt klingen, aber er ist konkret. Er ist konkret für die JournalistInnen, die aufgrund guter investigativer Arbeiten verfolgt werden. Er ist konkret für Minderheiten, die wie sexuelle Minderheiten von Politikern als abnormal bezeichnet werden. Und er ist konkret für ethnische Minderheiten, die vom Staat zu oft auch bewusst nicht geschützt werden, wenn sie auf Hass und Gewalt stoßen. Und lassen Sie mich bitte dem Berichterstatter dafür danken, dass er in dem Lichte beispielsweise auch auf die Current Affairs Debate hinweist in seinem Report, die wir in der Parlamentarischen Versammlung in der letzten Sitzungswoche geführt haben. Das zeigt, wir als Europarat sind auch immer wieder bereit, uns zu modernisieren, sind auch beispielsweise bereit, für die LGBTI-Community in allen 46 Mitgliedstaaten ein starker Anwalt zu sein. Meine Damen und Herren, wir sind nicht hier, um die Finger auf andere zu richten. Wir sind hier von einer Erkenntnis getragen: Wenn wir die Menschenrechte nicht in allen Staaten dieser Organisation verteidigen, dann werden wir sie für niemanden verteidigen, und deshalb müssen wir sie verteidigen, und dieser Bericht gibt Hoffnung, dass wir weiter hinschauen werden, und dafür danke ich sehr dem Berichterstatter.
Thank you, Mr. Lux. And the next speaker is Mr. Vladimir Vardayan from Armenia and representing the EPP group. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, let me express the words of gratitude to the Monitoring Committee and the reporter for the excellent work done. And thank you for identifying the common problems we face, problems concerning the judiciary, corruption, elections, which unfortunately are still the part of our life and the part of the monitoring procedure. For sure, during this period, some countries have bigger and better success in comparison with the others. Some countries still have some shortcomings, but for some of the countries, both in the monitoring and post-monitoring procedure, as well as for the countries in the periodical review, we may call this report as rather regress report than progress report. You know, I agree with previous orators who said that our organization is about promise. We give this promise to our people, we give promise to each of us, and the obligation we are undertaking should be respected and protected, because we are not vis-a-vis obligations, we are obligations before our people, before our values. And for sure, I understand perfectly well that now we are facing very serious geopolitical problems, and the serious violations of yesterday now considered as minor ones, but we shouldn't keep the blind eye on this situation. We should go ahead and have the same approach to all the violations we face. Unfortunately, we should say that some member states are still continue behavior which is rather not corresponding to the values of this organization. For example, a couple of days ago, one of the leaders of the country expressed that if they don't want to have a peace treaty on our conditions, so our borders will be there where we like. Sorry, this is not the Council of Europe rhetoric. This is not something which should be considered as the obligations in the framework of the obligations before the Council of Europe. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, at this very moment when in this cozy hemicycle we discussing the issues concerning the protection of human rights, 120,000 people who are protected under this organization, under this assembly, and under this European Convention of Human Rights, we're starving, and we are waiting for any kind of response from international community. And this is quite important, that this organization should have the same standards to all the countries, to all the corners of the Council of Europe, since all the citizens protected under the European Convention should have the same guarantees of human rights and should benefit from the values of democracy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vardanyan. And the next speaker is Mr. Julian Bulai from Romania, representing ALDE Group. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Madam President. Dear Chairperson, Mr. Fassino, dear representatives of the Secretariat, thank you for what you're doing in the Monitoring Committee and for all your dedicated work and for this report. I have only one reason for being reluctant in saying that I think this is the most important committee, and that is because we have to be appreciative for all the work being done in all the committees, but this committee is really important because it is in camera, and then you can have a real discussion and a sincere discussion without the pressure of going public. And I really appreciate this, and all the actors within our committee is appreciating this very much. That being said, I am very much thankful for the rapporteurs for their great reports last year for both Turkey, Hungary, also Georgia. That being said, there have been also great periodic review reports on several countries, including Romania. A very good report. I thank the rapporteurs for that. The Monitoring Committee is the committee where members of the Assembly can request opinions from the Venice Commission. And traditionally, this is a tool used, out of my experience, mostly by Central Eastern states. It is extraordinary that also in camera setting, Western members of the Council of Europe are very keen on finding out more on their inner issues by demanding an opinion from the Venice Commission. And I really, really appreciate this because this is a real true mirror where you can see yourself with where you stand now and you can improve it. And in this committee, this happens without the pressure of public exposure. That being said, one final remark in a better version of this committee would be to have a sort of relation with the Office of the Human Rights Commissioner, as we could ask opinions from the Venice Commission in order to issue statements on the legislative pieces initiated in the national parliaments or by the governments. I think it would be excellent, respecting the independence of the Human Rights Commissioner Office, also to have a type of relationship, institutional relationship between this committee and the Human Rights Commissioner Office in order to ask for pertinent opinions when there is an obvious suspicion of human rights breaches. Is this something that we could do in the coming summit of the Reykjavik? Yes, probably. There is a way to go in order to reach a point where there could be a coordination relationship between two entities, yes, but here we are, it's a good committee, it can be even perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bulay. The next speaker is Mr. Asim Muladzada from Azerbaijan. Yeah, the floor is yours, representing the European Conservatives.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I would like to express gratitude to Chairman of Monitoring Committee. Very important information, in some cases in very good details. What I would like to raise, one of the biggest problems which we're suffering in Europe now, it's in some cases lack of respect to international legal system, rule of law, territorial integrity of countries, some careful attendance, any toponymic things, because what we have now, we in Europe now in situation of war, aggression, occupation of territories of many countries. And in this situation, I believe that Monitoring Committee can do a lot of things on behalf of Council of Europe. Also, what we have now, it's starting monitoring of big countries, because usually new members or small countries under scrutiny. But there are a lot of information of violation of human rights, ethnic rights, cultural and religious rights in big European countries. Like an example, recently in center of Paris, 2 ladies were killed because they have a different color of skin. Attack to synagogue. 80,000 citizens of France with Jewish origin now left, and there is a in our Israel, there is a village of French citizens of Jewish origin. And I think that this type of monitoring of France, trying to prevent anti-Semitism, anti-Islamism, and racism is important also for Netherlands. And because in Netherlands we had a lot of facts, burning of mosques, attack to synagogue, and we believe that monitoring procedure will open these things which are against the major European principles of human rights, democracy, and rule of law. I hope that monitoring committee will have the same scrutiny for big countries, member of European Union, where situation, especially on situation related to hatred, religious hatred, cultural hatred, we should stop it because it's really very dangerous. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mulatzada. The next speaker, and then I continue on the speakers list. I look at seat 100, but the Irakli Shikovani from Georgia and the Socialist Group, but you are, yes, you are in another place.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I would like to thank Mr. Fasinut for compiling the work that has been done within the monitoring committee. I think the work that has been done over the year, and especially taking account that this year was the post-pandemic year, there's a lot of things that have been done, and truly this is the progress. And I will be very short to underline that it is very important that my country, the country that is under the monitoring, has a great working relationship with the institutions of the Council of Europe and the Parliamentary Assembly itself. Also, I would like to underline and thank the professionalism and the dedication of the rapporteurs, and thank them for their efforts, and of course the representatives of the Secretariat. There are many things that in my country we are still working, but the progress is obvious, and I also would like to welcome that the cooperation and the relationship that we have with the monitoring procedure has been exemplary, and in this regard Georgia will continue its work to make sure that we comply with all of the obligations that was taken by my country, and rather sooner we'll move to the next stage than later. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shikovani. The next speaker is from Armenia, and it's Haik Mariamyan, representing EPP. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dear colleagues, I can see the looks on your faces. Armenians are going to speak about Azerbaijani aggression, POWs, Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, and Azerbaijani delegation will burden you with the flow of fake information. But let me explain you why we are obliged to speak up about the humanitarian catastrophe caused by the Azerbaijani blockade of the Latchin corridor and other above-mentioned topics. Please consider my words not as a political speech, but as a food for thinking. For instance, some of us today, after the session, will visit one of the restaurants here in Strasbourg, and I'm asking you, while choosing your dinner, please keep in mind that 120,000 people in Nagorno-Karabakh have nothing to choose from but the plain pasta or buckwheat. No vegetables, no fruits, nothing. And when you, honorable colleagues, will get to your cozy and warm hotel rooms to hide from the cold wind and watch some news, please remember that 120,000 Armenians have no gas and electricity for 6 to 8 hours a day. For those of you who have children, please imagine what would you do if someone in the world would hinder their education? If it would be so cold in the classrooms that the schools had to shut down for almost a month. And if any of you will have a headache after a long day, please, while swallowing a painkiller, remember that 120,000 Armenians in Artsakh are running out of meds. And when Mr. Saidov will tell that self-proclaimed activists are exercising their magnificent right of freedom of speech, though the sentence freedom of speech in Azerbaijan is an oxymoron. Please remember that Azerbaijan is 104th in environmental performance index by Yale University. And I don't recall any mass ecological protests in Azerbaijan, though a few moments ago we witnessed an Azerbaijani representative questioning French democracy. Could you imagine that after 9th of November of 1989, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, in Europe there will be a place where families and relatives are forcefully divided? In 21st century, children are not able to meet their parents for more than 1.5 months. But make no mistakes, we can't wait for 30 years. The Latchin corridor has to be unlocked now. And as Lemkin Institute for Genocide Prevention stated a few weeks ago, the world must act immediately to prevent a second Armenian genocide. Thank you, and I call you to support the amendments presented by the Armenian delegation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayanyan. And then we continue to Mr. Zoltán Börner, Hungary, and European Conservatives. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Dear colleagues, dear rapporteurs, Hungary is a strongly committed member state of the Council of Europe, and it supports the work carried out by the Monitoring Committee. We strongly oppose to mix Hungary's obligations under EU law and Council of Europe membership. EU-level issues are outside the competence of the Council of Europe. Due to the sui generis nature of the illegal order, compliance with obligations under the treaties shall only be examined within the framework of EU-level mechanisms. These questions should not be converted into Council of Europe level issues. Questions related to distribution of EU funds, economic cooperation of the member states and recovery of the EU's economy do not belong to the competence of the Council of Europe. What are the institutional guarantees that monitoring procedures will remain politically neutral? In order to make the work of the Monitoring Committee more responsive and effective, how can the monitoring procedures better take into account ongoing and planned domestic developments and reforms? All reports should be factual, objective, based on reliable sources. For example, in the last report on honoring the obligation and commitments by Hungary, there was a number of references to individual cases, and they are discussed in surprising detail. If in an administrative procedure, the authority complied with provisions of the law, if the judicial review by independent court in a fair process was ensured, then the outcome of the procedure cannot be addressed in the framework of membership obligations to the Council of Europe. We believe that issues which had been satisfactorily concluded years ago have no added value in the assessment of the situation currently prevailing in a monitored country, but rather reflect a biased attitude within the report. If the aim of the monitoring procedure is to avoid the changes in rapporteurship during the 2-year periodic review, would not the extension of the duration of the monitoring procedure to 3 or more years be counterproductive? Last but not least, a number of reports refer to the same sources and to the findings of these as well. This way, through the system of circular references, one single statement formulated by an NGO or by the Venice Commission has a double or triple effect, while the opposing opinion do not have such an impact, which questions that objectivity of a report. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Börner. The next speaker is Mr. Archil Talakvatse from Georgia and the Socialist Group. Yes, the floor is yours.
Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, we would like to give a high credit to the committee for the diligent work completed. And I would like to thank Mr. Fassino for the comprehensive presentation. First, we would like to appreciate strong wording in the resolution in support of Georgia's territorial integrity. The fruitful cooperation with the Council of Europe gives us further motivation to consolidate our democracy and continue work on reforms. And it is helpful that the resolution highlights the importance of the wider and constructive participation and the engagement of the political parties in the process of implementation of reforms. Despite the occupation of Georgia's territories by the Russian Federation, Georgia has proved that we are able to deliver reforms and to consolidate our democracy further, to strengthen rule of law and protect human rights in the country. The work completed by us in the recent years includes ensured and greater guarantees for the protection of human rights through the constitutional amendments, new labor law, and successful penitentiary reform with a double-fold decrease of the prison population, new legislation on child's rights and the juvenile justice, new legislation enforced on disability rights, and new regulations on environmental protection and biodiversity. Georgia has a stronger parliament now. Georgia has more pluralistic parliament now, with stronger instruments on oversight and stronger mechanisms to hold government accountable. We enforce the laws to support greater participation of women in politics. Georgia has pluralistic and independent media in operation. The several package of reforms in judiciary implemented by us gave a clear result. We observed that applications against Georgia in the European Court of Human Rights decreased by 60%. Competitive environment in the courts restored. The balance in the decisions between the parties in dispute is also there. And this promising results ensures us that reforms for the judiciary system must continue. And finally, we are grateful that there are 12 recommendations by the European Union, which gives a clear avenue for Georgia's democratic path. This was Georgia's story in short. It is evidently better Georgia now than it was 10 years ago. And we are grateful for the excellent cooperation with Council of Europe, and we assure you that commitments will be fulfilled. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Talakvatse. I then continue with Mrs. Maria Menseva, Ukraine EPP Group, and continue Demir after that. The floor is yours, Mrs.
Thank you, dear Madam Scout, dear President. Colleagues, this report is extremely important, even though there are not many colleagues which are remaining in the hall. And we understand that monitoring some of the member states during the international armed conflict is also challenging, even though the reporters, the delegate from Sweden, Switzerland and Iceland did make contacts with Ukrainian delegation. I can reconfirm that, even though I would like to point out that the latest contacts could have been more extended to various political parties. And I would like to inform the rapporteur and also the committee, the extended committee on monitoring procedures, that, for instance, the parts which are missing, and again, you can't fill in all the laws that Ukrainian parliament is passing, because we do around 30 laws per week, and the documents have to be prepared beforehand. So I would like to update you that one of the important items, the law on media, which was in line with all obligations, amended and voted by all the parties of Ukrainian parliament, supported by those who had who had questioned this law, in close cooperation with the Council of Europe authorities. Also, the very important topic, fighting corruption. Colleagues, I would like to point out that we are the only country who has initiated negotiated and passed in the parliament the law on fighting oligarchs, those people who can influence the media, who can influence the elections, who have enormous powers in economy and who directly impose it in the political spectrum. And indeed, we are expecting the feedback of the Venice Commission, looking forward to that. But if we are fighting corruption, we joke in Ukraine, we have to choose whether we are smart or beautiful. We can be both, of course, but then please support that in this endeavors in fighting corruption. Of course, I cannot not mention the High Commission on Ethics, which was duly involved in the Supreme Council of Justice, and all that was done during the missile attacks and enormous strikes of the Russian rockets on various regions of Ukraine. Of course, we have had the candidates for the High Commission on Judges, and of course we can say that those who have not met the criteria will never be appointed. That is not all on our side, but I see that I'm running out of time, and we remain at disposal for the visit that hasn't been done in person, but I would like to reconfirm and enlarge and extend our invitations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Messentseva. Then I continue with Mr. Damien Gauthier from Switzerland and ALDE.
Merci, Madame la Présidente de séance, et merci au Président de la Commission de la vue d'ensemble qu'il a pu donner. J'interviens sur le Monténégro. Je suis co-rapporteur avec M. Tornaritis de Chypre, qui n'est pas ici, et je dois dire que nous avons une certaine inquiétude, les co-rapporteurs, et le Président en a parlé, parce que la situation est une situation de blocage institutionnel actuellement au Monténégro, dans la mesure où il n'y a plus de majorité pour le gouvernement, que le Président de la République refuse de nommer un nouveau Premier ministre, que le Parlement veut imposer la nomination d'un nouveau gouvernement et a voté une loi pour s'en donner les moyens. On n'est pas sûr de la constitutionnalité de cette loi. La Cour constitutionnelle n'est plus fonctionnelle, car plusieurs juges sont partis en retraite et le Parlement n'a pas été en mesure d'élire de nouveaux juges parce que cela requiert une majorité absolue et il ne trouve pas de majorité. Lorsque nous avons fait un voyage sur place l'été dernier et dans les discussions que nous avions eues avec la délégation et les autorités monténégrines par le passé, on nous annonçait régulièrement de l'optimisme quant à la conclusion de cette procédure et la possibilité d'élire de nouveaux juges. Et à chaque fois, on est déçu par le fait que le Parlement n'y arrive pas. Il n'y a pas la majorité qualifiée, avec chaque fois des explications qu'il faut changer ou reprendre tel ou tel élément de la procédure. Et c'est particulièrement inquiétant parce que la Cour constitutionnelle n'a aujourd'hui plus de quorum, ne peut donc plus prendre de décision. Or, elle est l'instance suprême de recours en matière aussi électorale, et les élections doivent se tenir, les élections présidentielles. La date a été fixée maintenant à la mi-mars, et elles auront lieu. Et probablement qu'une des possibilités politiquement, si les autorités se mettent d'accord à ce sujet, c'est aussi qu'à un moment donné, il y a des élections législatives anticipées. Et pour cela aussi, il faudrait une Cour constitutionnelle fonctionnelle. Donc on a un système en échec, on dirait une situation de patte, une situation de blocage complet où chaque institution bloque l'autre dans la résolution de la situation. Un avis a été demandé par le Président de la République à la Commission de Venise sur la constitutionnalité de la loi sur les pouvoirs présidentiels qui a été votée récemment, fin décembre, par le Parlement. Et c'est intéressant parce que la Commission de Venise, à mon avis très justement, insiste, avant de parler de cette question, insiste beaucoup sur la nécessité de la coopération loyale entre les organes de l'État. Et c'est vraiment ce à quoi nous aimerions appeler les autorités du Monténégro, véritablement que les institutions, le Parlement, le Président de la République coopèrent pour trouver une solution à ce blocage, pour en sortir, de manière à éviter une situation de crispation accrue qui ne serait pas dans l'intérêt du pays, qui ne serait pas dans l'intérêt des engagements qu'il a pris ici devant cette Assemblée et dans l'ensemble de son intégration à l'espace européen. Donc nous appelons de manière assez ferme et assez forte les autorités du Monténégro à entrer dans ce sens d'un dialogue constructif entre les autorités pour trouver des solutions politiques.
Thank you, Mr. Cotier. Then we continue with Mr. José María Sánchez García from Spain and European Conservatives. The floor is yours.
Gracias, señora Presidente. Me voy a referir a los casos de Polonia y Hungría, ambos estados bajo monitorización o control de la Asamblea. El informe es claramente más detallado respecto a Polonia y se insiste en el caso de Polonia en que ha habido dos pronunciamientos de la Corte Constitucional polaca que han declarado que es incompatible la Constitución polaca con el artículo 6 de la Convención Europea de Derechos Humanos, tal y como viene siendo interpretado por la Corte. Este informe insiste además en que Polonia debe cumplir las sentencias de la Corte Europea. Todo ello suscita un problema muy relevante desde el punto de vista jurídico, a saber, el problema de la superioridad o supremacía del derecho del Consejo de Europa, léase la Convención de Derechos Humanos, además de sus sentencias, la posible supremacía respecto a la Constitución polaca. Es decir, un debate mutatis mutandis semejante al que se está produciendo en la Unión Europea respecto de la primacía del derecho a la Unión Europea sobre las normas constitucionales de los Estados miembros. Para resolver este problema, el Consejo de Europa, no esta Asamblea, el Consejo de Europa no tiene ningún instrumento legal. Entre otras cosas, porque el Consejo de Europa no fue fundado para que ninguno de sus órganos determinase la legitimidad o ilegitimidad de las normas constitucionales nacionales, sino que fue fundado, y en particular la Convención Europea de Derechos Humanos, para que la Corte pudiera reparar violaciones singulares de derechos reconocidos en la Convención Europea de Derechos Humanos. No, insisto, la validez o legitimidad de normas constitucionales generales, por lo tanto, de los Estados miembros del Consejo de Europa. Por lo tanto, es un poco de fantasía jurídica que aquí se pretenda poner en cuestión este pronunciamiento de la Corte Constitucional polaca. Por otra parte, se insiste también en que la composición no es una composición que se caracterice por la independencia. Bueno, y entonces, ¿qué podemos decir de un órgano constitucional de control como es el Consejo Constitucional francés, que es un órgano político por su propia naturaleza? Tampoco es independiente, y aquí nadie lo pone en cuestión. Por no hablar de estados que siguen el modelo de Kelsen, como es el caso de España, en que el Tribunal progresivamente, el Tribunal Constitucional cada vez es más dependiente político. No voy a mencionar a los últimos avatares que ha sufrido ese Tribunal Constitucional español en el último mes para conseguir por el Gobierno español que sea totalmente dependiente. Por último, independencia del Consejo del Consejo del Poder Judicial también de Polonia. Bien, pero vamos a ver, ¿y el Consejo General del Poder Judicial español o el italiano de la magistratura? Son todos dependientes de los partidos políticos. Se eligen mediante el sistema de lotización. Por lo tanto, ¿cuál es aquí la rareza o el escándalo? Concluyo. Hungría. Yo pensé que habíamos decidido todos ser demócratas. Ahora, si a Hungría se le tiene que monitorizar porque sigue unas políticas en materia de educación, de libertad religiosa y de libertad ideológica disconformes con el mainstream y el establishment, pues entonces parece que la democracia ya no gusta. Es evidente que en Hungría se siguen políticas que defienden una concepción tradicional de la vida que no es aceptada por muchos partidos políticos europeos y, por lo tanto, por muchos partidos políticos europeos que actúan contra la libertad. Nada más.
Thank you, sir. I ask you to respect the speaking time because you're taking time from your colleagues. The next speaker is Mr. Ahmed Yildiz from Turkey.
Of course, I have a very concrete experience on monitoring process as chairperson of the Turkish delegation. First of all, I thank the rapporteurs and chair of the committee, but I have some suggestions here. I defend Turkey in the Turkish monitoring process, of course, but I am not a member of the monitoring committee, just because I am not registered in a political group. So I don't have any idea how others doing, how to compare Turkish process with other countries monitored. So I think it is unfair, and I will question it in my report on the Rules Committee to improve in my report about how to improve the participation in the activities of the Assembly. Secondly, of course, a smooth monitoring process requires some prerequisite from both sides, from the monitored country, from the Assembly members, especially from monitors, but also from the authorities in the Committee of Ministers, especially when the pending issues continue in the courts, in the European Court of Human Rights. Also about their relationship with some organizations. And it requires some minimum consistency in the Committee of Ministers. The worst sickness here is the discrimination. Discrimination even among the verdicts of the European Court of Human Rights. Since I started here in this position, I always ask this question to Secretary General of the Council, President of the Assembly, and others. Why is this discrimination? Why don't we talk about some verdicts that have not been implemented for 10 years, 15 years? Just pick some of them as selectively. Everybody says, you are right. All must be implemented. But everybody just mentions one. So it creates some bad conclusion in the public. We should leave this. At the end, I thank the rapporteurs again, but this is my last speech in the Assembly. In the part session, I should touch one issue that I attend the meetings of ECRI, European Committee Against Racism and Intolerance, and I try to incorporate it in the works of the political committee. To my knowledge, the burning of Holy Quran under the control of the authorities, police forces of one country, is a very Islamophobic hate action to be condemned here. It is not freedom of speech. I waited till now, somebody will touch it. They didn't, and I had to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yildiz. The next speaker is Mr. John Howell from United Kingdom and European Conservatives.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank Piero Fassino for this report. I would say that, wouldn't I? I'm one of his rapporteurs, so I have a self-interest in doing that, but I think his report is a good report. But you know, whether it is Mr. Fassino or the previous chairs of this committee, there is one thing that I have never been invited to, and I think it is because it has never occurred. And that is a discussion on what being a rapporteur is all about. I think it's absolutely important that we have that sort of discussion because, because how you approach being a rapporteur is very important to getting the job done. And I'm a very deliverables-orientated person, so I would like to understand that better. Countries are very different. So what I'm not requiring is a standard template that applies to all rapporteurs, and they just have to follow that template. And in particular, while we're on this subject, let me pay tribute to the Secretariat, who provide tremendous help to all us rapporteurs when we go to the countries concerned. But to go back to the countries and them being very different. One of the crucial things about being a rapporteur, I have found, is that it is much better to negotiate and to have dialogue than to stand up and scream and shout at the country that you are observing. It is much better to approach this with the sort of quiet diplomacy that can get things done and can get an answer to the questions that you are trying to find out. And I do think that that is crucial for everyone to take on board. As I pay tribute to Mr. Yildiz, who has run the Turkish delegation very effectively and helped us as rapporteurs in Turkey throughout the process. But we are sensitive there that Turkey is coming up to political elections, and we are sensitive to those political elections. One of the things that we need to address is when we are separate totally from the Committee of Ministers and when we can work with them. There are occasions when being a rapporteur means that we overlap with what the Committee of Ministers is doing, and we must have an ability to have conversations with them to be able to take forward the determination that we all show in fulfilling our roles.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. And this debate's last speaker is Mr. Armen Gevorgyan from Armenia and European Conservatives. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The government of Azerbaijan, as well as its representatives in this assembly, want us to forget about the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. They don't want you to use the name of this unrecognized state. They don't want you to speak about the human toll of its aggression during the 44-day war in 2020. Moreover, Azerbaijan has since May 2021 occupied sovereign territories of Armenia, launched a new three-day intensive hostilities last September in the southern Armenia, and since then have refused to withdraw from our lands and even build fortifications. Today we are witnessing a grave humanitarian crisis in Nagorno-Karabakh. Azerbaijani government has imposed a 46-day and counting siege on Nagorno-Karabakh, depriving its people of their right to live in dignity, freedom of movement, import of food supplies, medicine, and other essential goods. This is not just a human rights issue, but a manifestation of a state policy of ethnic cleansings by Azerbaijan. I believe Europe must stay focused on Nagorno-Karabakh. In that context, it's quite strange that the decision to dispatch a PACE monitoring mission for fact-finding purposes in the region is not being implemented. What is this? Indifference or expression of dysfunctionality of our organization? The democracy index by The Economist defines Azerbaijan as an authoritarian state. It has been ruled by the same family for more than 40 years, and over the past 30 years has started free war against the Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh, killing thousands of people, destroying the cultural and religious heritage of the Armenian people. Today, it terrorizes the Armenians through the siege of Latchin corridor. Given the authoritarian and terrorist nature of Azerbaijan, is it possible to imagine Nagorno-Karabakh as part of it? Azerbaijan has for years manipulated the public opinion in our organization, something they are now unable to do in European Parliament, in United Nations Security Council, or OSCE. We have to reflect on why this is the case. I also want to invite this Assembly attention to the fact that Azerbaijan, since late 2022, has begun a process of abolishing the self-governing status of Nakhichevan Autonomous Republic. This is a clear violation of the European Charter of Local Self-Governance that has to be prevented. Madam Chairman, it is also time for this Assembly to very seriously consider non-recognition of credentials of those delegations whose governments are engaged in transboundary use of force or other serious and systematic violations of human rights, be that in their own territory or abroad. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That concludes the list of speakers. The speeches of members on the speakers list, they are not here, so there's no more to be tabled, I think. And I would like to call Mr. Fasino. You are both chair of the committee and also rapporteurs to reply to the debate, and you have, of course, then 3 minutes.
Grazie Presidente, merci Monsieur le Président. Je veux remercier avant tout tous les collègues qui sont intervenus et qui ont exprimé appréciation pour l'activité de la Commission et appréciation pour toute l'activité de nos rapporteurs et de nos secrétariats. Je partage beaucoup de choses qui ont été dites, donc je ne reprends pas ça. Je veux seulement dire quelque chose. Premier point, je suis absolument d'accord avec le collègue Ozoy. Nous sommes aujourd'hui dans une phase dans laquelle les démocraties sont mises à risque, sont mises en cause de tendances autocratiques. Il y a en plusieurs pays européens, et pas seulement européens, la tendance à contrôler les médias, l'indépendance de la magistrature, les droits de la minorité, des minorités. Et je pense donc qu'il faut absolument refuser cette tendance autocratique et nous battre pour affirmer les principes démocratiques, parce que ça, c'est la façon essentielle pour défendre la liberté et les droits des citoyens. Deuxième point, la Commission de Venise, c'est un instrument essentiel. Et nous, on travaille presque chaque jour avec la Commission de Venise. Et je souligne la nécessité que les pays qui sont soumis à monitorage accomplissent aux indications et aux avis que la Commission de Venise nous propose. Troisième point, le collègue Bona. Il n'y a aucune référence dans le rapport sur l'Hongrie aux problèmes de relations entre l'Hongrie et l'Union européenne. Et nous, on ne substitue pas l'activité et les fonctions de l'Union européenne. Mais les questions que nous avons posées dans la procédure de monitorage de l'Hongrie concernent le respect des principes, des valeurs et des critères qui sont établis à la base du Conseil de l'Europe. Et chaque pays qui est membre du Conseil de l'Europe, et l'Hongrie, il est membre de notre Conseil, il est obligé à respecter et accomplir les critères, les valeurs et les principes qui règlent la vie de notre Assemblée. Pour cette raison, je dis à M. Sanchez qu'il a souligné qu'il y a dans plusieurs pays la tendance de la politique à envahir l'activité de la magistrature ou contrôler les médias, qu'accomplir aux critères, aux valeurs, aux avis de notre Assemblée et du Conseil de l'Europe, c'est la façon pour respecter l'autonomie et l'indépendance de cette institution, et pas le contraire. Et enfin, je veux dire à M. Sanchez encore qu'il n'est pas en cause les droits de la Pologne, de l'Hongrie, de chaque pays de se donner les lois qu'il veut. Mais il ne peut pas prétendre de se donner les lois qu'il veut et dans le même temps d'être membre d'un Conseil d'Europe si ces lois ils sont en contradiction avec les critères, les valeurs et les règles du Conseil de l'Europe. Ça, c'est la question. Il faut seulement choisir. La Pologne, elle doit choisir si elle veut être membre de notre Assemblée, et alors, s'il est membre de notre Conseil et de notre Assemblée, il doit respecter les règles qui nous concernent. Il veut faire des autres choix, libre de les faire. Mais alors, il ne peut pas prétendre d'être membre du Conseil de l'Europe. Il faut être clair sur cette question. Enfin, je partage entièrement ce qu'a dit M. Howell. Je pense que l'activité de monitorage, ce n'est pas une activité de justice. Nous ne sommes pas un tribunal. Nous exerçons l'activité de monitorage pour vérifier les standards démocratiques dans les pays de notre institution et pour favoriser que les pays accomplissent à tous les valeurs, les droits et les critères de notre institution. Et nous, on veut accompagner ces pays. Et donc, les recommandations que nous approuvons, les avis de la Commission de Venise, sont des instruments qui doivent encourager les pays membres à se donner des lois, des règles, des attitudes qui soient cohérentes avec les standards démocratiques de notre Assemblée. Et je partage, comme il a dit M. Howell, et je vais terminer, que nos rapporteurs, tout de suite, un mot, que nos rapporteurs doivent être avant tout des hommes et des femmes de dialogue pour avoir une attitude positive avec les pays qui sont soumis à un monitorage et ensemble travailler pour des finalités qui sont communes. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Mr. Fassino. The debate is closed. The Committee on Monitoring has presented a draft resolution on document 15682, to which 2 amendments and 1 sub-amendment have been tabled. Amendments will be taken in the order in which they appear in the compendium, and I remind you that speeches on amendments are limited to 30 seconds. I understand that the chairpersons of the Committee on Monitoring wishes to propose to the Assembly that Amendment 1 and 2 to the draft resolution, which were unanimously approved by the Committee, should be declared as agreed by the Assembly. However, 2 will be taken separately as it has a sub-amendment. Therefore, Amendment 1 to the draft resolution, which was unanimously approved by the Committee, should be declared as agreed to the Assembly. Is it so, Chairperson? Yes, it's so. Does anyone object?
Oui.
Yeah, oui. Does anyone object? No? I see none. There is no objection. I declare that Amendment 1 to the draft resolution have been agreed. And I call Mr. Armen Rustamanyan to support Amendment 2. You have 30 seconds. Yes, and another one want to, he's not in the plenary. 333, you have the floor. I do not see, introduce yourself. 30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This amendment has also passed unanimously after being sub-amendment by the rapporteur. It reflects the interim measure by the court on the Latchin corridor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rubinian. I call Mr. Fassino on behalf of the Monitoring Committee to support the sub-amendment. You have 30 seconds. Another one want to support? Mr. Sado, to support? You are against the amendment. You are against. Then, yeah. But I call Mr. Fassino on behalf of the Monitoring Committee to support
Oui,
the amendment.
oui, mon sous-amendement oral signifie de biffer les mots the unblocking of. Et donc, après cette correction, le texte sera implemented the institution of 21 December to 22 regarding the Latchin corridor.
Thank you. And then I also have to call anyone else to speak against the sub-amendment. I think it was Mr. Sado. Yes?
Madam President, actually,
I do not have any here.
this is a little bit,
Also
I
to
think,
support.
misunderstanding. Mr. Rubinian, actually Mr. Rustaman, presented this amendment. And of course, I was against, because this amendment absolutely changed the decision and the interim decision of the European Court of Human Rights, because they are writing about the so-called unblocking, but in the decision you can see alleged, the word alleged. That's why I was against. In this case, my president of the committee, Mr. Fassino, said that he's going to present sub-amendment. And he already said about that. Sub-amendments is acceptable. And that's why I am against completely amendments which presented by Mr. Rustamian, and I'm in favor of sub-amendment which presented by President of the Monitoring Committee.
We understand your message, but I have to ask, what is Mr. Rubinian's opinion on the sub-amendment?
No, but I'm for.
You are in favor of the sub-amendment, yes?
Yes.
And the committee is obviously in favor. I shall now put the sub-amendment to the vote, and the vote is open. And the vote is closed. I call for the result to be displayed. And the sub-amendment is agreed to. Now we come to the main amendment 2 as amended. Does anyone wish to speak against the amendment? No, I see none. The committee is obviously in favor. Yes, it is. I shall now put the amendment as amended to the vote, and the vote is open. And the vote is closed. I call for the result to be displayed. And Amendment 2, as amended, is agreed to. We will now proceed to vote on the draft resolution contained in document 15682, and the vote is open. And the vote is closed. I call for the result to be displayed, and the draft resolution in document 15682 is adopted. A few minutes continues with the next item.
Ladies and gentlemen, let us start the next debate, please. Can you move either into your seats or out of the building? The next item of business this afternoon is debate on the report titled The Honouring of Obligations and Commitments by the Republic of Moldova. It is document 15680, presented by Monsieur Pierre-Alain Fridez and Ms. Ineza Libina Egneri on behalf of the Committee on Monitoring. Go on.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just for the record, I would like to inform you that in the previous item, I accidentally voted in the favor of sub-amendment, but for the record, I would like to be taken the records as against sub-amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. You have put your position quite clearly on the record. Obviously, the vote cannot be retaken, but members have heard your views. Thank you. I believe that Monsieur Fridez is going to be the sole rapporteur who is explaining things. And you have 7 minutes now and 3 minutes at the end to reply to the debate. La parole est avec vous.
Merci, Monsieur le Vice-président. Chers collègues, en premier lieu, j'aimerais excuser l'absence de Madame Ineza Libina Egneri de Lettonie, co-rapportrice, qui vient d'être nommée ministre de la Justice dans son pays et qui a donc dû quitter notre Assemblée. J'aimerais la remercier pour l'excellent travail qu'elle a mené durant ces 2 dernières années dans le cadre du mandat qui nous a été confié. Le présent rapport reflète les développements survenus en Moldova depuis le dernier rapport débattu par l'Assemblée parlementaire en octobre 2019. À l'époque, Mme Sandu était Première ministre et M. Dodon, Président de la République, et ils avaient uni leurs forces dans une coalition qui visait à désoligarchiser le pays. Depuis lors, ce pays a connu des changements majeurs et le paysage politique de la Moldova s'est profondément modifié. Mme Sandu a remporté les élections présidentielles en novembre 2020, mais son parti n'avait alors pas la majorité parlementaire. Cela a déclenché une crise politique et constitutionnelle qui a finalement conduit à des élections anticipées. En juillet 2021, le parti de Mme Sandu a remporté une nette majorité parlementaire. Pour la première fois, le Parlement disposait d'une majorité stable, composée d'un seul parti. Depuis lors, des développements notables concernant le fonctionnement des institutions démocratiques sont intervenus. Des progrès significatifs ont été réalisés en matière d'égalité entre les hommes et les femmes occupant des postes clés de l'État et la Convention d'Istanbul a été ratifiée. Nous avons réalisé 2 visites dans le pays en octobre 2021 et juin 2022. Le rapport fait une large place à la réforme du système judiciaire et à la lutte contre la corruption, des domaines de réforme prioritaires pour les autorités actuelles. L'adoption d'amendements constitutionnels visant à dépolitiser le système judiciaire constitue un progrès significatif. Ces amendements ont été adoptés par consensus politique, ce qui est positif. Un premier paquet d'amendements relatifs au système judiciaire a été adopté rapidement en août 2021, avant l'adoption des amendements constitutionnels. La Commission de Venise a émis plusieurs avis critiques à cette époque et adressé plusieurs recommandations, pour la plupart intégrées par la suite dans la législation révisée. L'un des derniers développements concerne l'adoption des amendements à la loi sur le parquet, suivant les recommandations de la Commission de Venise. Celle-ci concerne par exemple la composition de la commission d'évaluation et les critères d'évaluation du procureur général. Comme on s'en souvient, la révision des critères de sélection et d'évaluation du procureur général a été une question très débattue. Pour mémoire, à l'époque, à l'automne 2021, l'ancien procureur général, M. Stoyanoglu, a été suspendu, arrêté et maintenu assigné à résidence. Il a déposé une plainte auprès de la Cour européenne des droits de l'homme. En vue de nettoyer le système de ces éléments corrompus, les autorités ont mis sur pied un mécanisme d'évaluation externe pour vérifier l'intégrité des juges et des procureurs et faire en sorte que ceux qui échouent au test soient écartés du système. Une commission de pré-vérification, ou appelée pré-wetting, a été créée en mars 2022. Cette commission est chargée de sélectionner les membres du Conseil supérieur des magistrats et du Conseil supérieur des procureurs et d'autres organes spécialisés et d'assurer qu'ils répondent aux critères d'intégrité. Il y a également eu des développements concernant la lutte contre la corruption, avec la nomination d'une nouvelle procureure en chef anticorruption et la modification de la législation. Nous avons rappelé les recommandations du GRECO, notamment pour le Parlement, qui devrait adopter un code de conduite. Les autorités ont également lancé des enquêtes pour lutter contre la corruption politique. Cela inclut le cas de l'ancien président Dodon, actuellement sous contrôle judiciaire, accusé d'enrichissement illicite, de corruption passive, de financement illégal de partis et de trahison, ainsi que de 4 anciens députés communistes et de Mme Marina Tauber, députée du parti Shor, qui a été arrêtée cet été et est désormais assignée à résidence. Le rapport s'intéresse également à la situation de la région autonome de Gagaouzie et aux relations entre Chisinau et Comrat, qui ont été difficiles ces derniers mois, et cela n'est pas sans rapport avec le contexte régional général. Dans ce rapport, il n'était pas possible d'ignorer le contexte général partagé par l'ensemble de nos pays, mais ayant un impact tout particulier dans un État comme la Moldova, en proie à des difficultés économiques et un PIB très bas. La pandémie a eu un impact négatif sur les institutions publiques qui ont dû faire face à de graves contraintes sanitaires avec des moyens limités. Ensuite, le pays est confronté depuis 2 ans à une crise énergétique. La Moldova est fortement dépendante du gaz russe dont le prix a triplé depuis juillet 2021, incitant les autorités à déclarer l'état d'urgence pour faire face aux conséquences financières pour les ménages moldaves et à diversifier les sources d'énergie. Aujourd'hui, le pays est confronté à une forte inflation, plus de 30%, ce qui déclenche des manifestations devant le Parlement. Le déclenchement de la guerre en Ukraine n'a rien arrangé. Le pays a été confronté à l'arrivée massive de réfugiés en provenance d'Ukraine. Plus de 700 000 réfugiés sont entrés dans le pays et environ 100 000 y séjournent toujours. La représentante spéciale de la secrétaire générale pour les migrations et les réfugiés, Mme Kayacik, a rappelé dans un rapport que la Moldova est le pays voisin qui a accueilli le plus grand nombre de réfugiés d'Ukraine par rapport à sa population, une population estimée environ à 2,3 ou 2,5 millions. Récemment, une série de déclarations hostiles et provocatrices de la part de responsables russes et des autorités de facto en Transnistrie, l'annexion illégale de régions ukrainiennes par la Russie et la mobilisation partielle des Russes, qui touche également les citoyens moldaves ayant la double nationalité, ont ajouté des sujets de préoccupation. La demande d'adhésion à l'UE et plus récemment la participation de la Moldova au sommet de la communauté politique européenne à Prague constituent à cet égard une réponse à ces menaces pour la sécurité, un signal clair pour promouvoir un agenda européen et la volonté des autorités moldaves à s'arrimer à une grande alliance internationale. Une adhésion à l'OTAN n'étant pas à l'ordre du jour, l'Union européenne est un premier pas, l'article 42.7 du traité de Lisbonne, portant sur un engagement de secours mutuel en cas d'agression. Pour conclure, les réformes entreprises vont dans la bonne direction et doivent être soutenues. Le défi consiste à mettre en place des institutions solides, indépendantes et durables, à l'abri de toute interférence politique et dotées de ressources financières et humaines suffisantes, ce qui s'est parfois avéré difficile. Nous sommes conscients que de nombreuses réformes sont en cours et des difficultés que peuvent rencontrer les autorités actuelles. Mais il est de leur responsabilité, malgré leur nette majorité parlementaire stable, d'assurer un processus inclusif, ce qui implique la participation de l'opposition et de la société civile, et de veiller au respect constant de l'état de droit. Nous tenons à souligner une fois encore l'excellente coopération ouverte et fructueuse des autorités moldaves, y compris la délégation parlementaire avec le Conseil de l'Europe et notamment la Commission de Venise. Il est très positif que les autorités recherchent et utilisent l'expertise de la Commission de Venise. Cela conduit à une coopération significative avec le Conseil de l'Europe. Pour terminer, j'aimerais remercier sincèrement Mme Sylvia Folter pour son soutien essentiel durant nos travaux. Merci.
Merci. In order to finish, thank you. In order to finish by 7 p.m., I will interrupt the list of speakers at about 6:55 to allow time for the reply and the vote. We now move to the speakers on behalf of the political groups, and the first is Mr. Funke. Is he here? Yes.
Ja, sehr geehrter Herr Präsident, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen! Zuerst einmal mein ausdrücklicher Dank und der Dank meiner gesamten Fraktion den Berichterstatterinnen für den vorliegenden Monitoring Report, meinen Kolleginnen Pierre-Alain Frides und Ines Libina-Egneré. Wir wissen ja alle, dass auch die Republik Moldau gerade diese großen Herausforderungen der Demokratie in einer schwierigen Situation meistern muss. Einerseits die durch den russischen Angriffskrieg auch hervorgerufene Wirtschaftskrise, gleichzeitig die Aufnahme sehr vieler Geflüchteter durch die Ukraine bei gleichzeitiger Destabilisierungsversuchen durch Russland und ungeklärten Fragen bezüglich der transnistrischen Region. Trotzdem hat sich die Moldau dazu entschieden, solidarisch mit der Ukraine zu sein, auch solidarisch an der Seite der Position Europas zu stehen. Umso mehr möchte ich unterstreichen, die Republik Moldau ist ein fester Bestandteil unserer europäischen Familie. Es ist richtig, dass die Europäische Kommission der Republik Moldau eine europäische Perspektive mit dem Kandidatenstatus gegeben hat. Jetzt liegt es an uns, gemeinsam diesen herausfordernden Weg zu unterstützen. Und die aktuelle Regierung meint es ernst mit der Rechtsstaatlichkeit und untermauert das auch mit Handlungen. Die Entfernung korrupter Politiker und politischer Beamter aus hohen Staatsämtern, die Ratifizierung der Istanbul-Konvention, eine umfassende Reform der Staatsanwaltschaft und Gerichtsbarkeit, die Stärkung der Antikorruptionsbehörden. Allerdings zeichnet der vorliegende Bericht auch ein Bild von Gefahren und Herausforderungen für die Zukunft. Wie soll der demokratische Staat mit politischen Parteien und Individuen umgehen, die Demokratie und Rechtsstaat schwer schädigen wollen? Wie können die Reformen schnellstmöglich umgesetzt werden und gleichzeitig demokratische Teilhabe gewährt werden? Die Herausforderung der Republik Moldau ist es, Rechtsstaatlichkeit aufzubauen und gleichzeitig die Rechte all derjenigen zu verteidigen, die diese am liebsten direkt wieder schwächen würden. Ob der aktuellen Regierung das gelingt, wird sich in Zukunft zeigen. Auch die aktuell regierende Partei wird irgendwann einmal, wie es in Demokratien ja ganz üblich ist, nicht als Gewinner aus einer Wahl hervorgehen. Auch ihre Politik wird irgendwann in Frage gestellt werden von neuen Personen, neuen Präsidentinnen oder Präsidenten, neuen Premierministern. Wenn dieser Moment gekommen ist, werden die aktuellen Reformen sich beweisen müssen. Erst recht, wenn politische Macht erneut oder dann auch von Individuen ausgeübt werden sollte, die nicht nur mit demokratischem Willen und unter der Prämisse von Rechtsstaatlichkeit und Demokratie handeln. In Deutschland sprechen wir vom Ideal der wehrhaften Demokratie. Demokratische Institutionen und eine demokratische Gesellschaft, die gemeinsam stärker sind als jede Einzelperson, die nicht in gutem Willen handelt, die nicht rechtsstaatlich und nach den Prinzipien der Demokratie agiert und versucht, sie zu schwächen. Lassen Sie uns die Republik Moldau gemeinsam kritisch auf diesem Weg zu einer wehrhaften Demokratie begleiten und sie in ihren demokratischen Bemühungen mit aller Kraft unterstützen. Vielen Dank.
Thank you. And now the next speaker is Madam Kalnina Lukashevika. Madam.
Mr. Chairman, dear colleagues, let me start by thanking the Monitoring Committee and the two co-rapporteurs, Mr. Pierre-Alain Frides and previous head of the Latvian delegation, Ms. Inese Libina-Egnere, for the excellent report. It is a particular pleasure to read in the draft resolution that since the summer of 2021, the authorities of Moldova have embarked on a far-reaching program of reform, notably in the judiciary and the fight against corruption, to tackle the roots of state capture and thereby restore integrity and public trust in state institutions. Dear colleagues, but today I would like to especially emphasize the highly supportive response of Moldova in accepting Ukrainian refugees. It is an example of humanity, solidarity, and democratic values. We live in times when these values are challenged, and only together we can defend them. I realize the extent of pressure Moldova is facing from Russia's aggressive foreign policy. In the light of that, even more we commend Moldova's resilience towards Russia, manipulative actions, and ability at the same time to achieve progress on the reform implementation. Moldova's efforts in the reform process have been acknowledged by this report, as well as by receiving the EU candidate country status. It is important to ensure the irreversibility and sustainability of the reforms, as the current progress will define Moldova's destiny in the future. We are delighted to note that the EU's support to Moldova has clearly reduced the impact of the Russia's war in Ukraine on Moldova, as well as improved its resilience to the aggressive Russian foreign policy and energy manipulation. It is essential for all of us to become independent of Russian energy sources, as soon as possible ending Russia's energy blackmail. It is important to strengthen our mutual support and solidarity as a basis for rules-based and values-based international order. Dear Moldovan friends, you can count on our support. Countries with valuable and relevant reform experience and accumulated expertise will continue to share it in order to help you to facilitate implementation of the reforms. And before I conclude, once again, let me thank the both rapporteurs for preparing this excellent report. Thank you.
Thank you indeed. And the next speaker on behalf of the ALDE group is Madam Stoica.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of ALDE, my political group, I welcome Ms. Egnere and Mr. Frides' excellent report and congratulate Moldova for the good resolution that they received. By now, we have all learned that Moldova is a small country with a big European heart, a parliamentary democracy that has embarked on a courageous reform despite the odds being stacked against them with a series of crises. The Russian illegal invasion and war waged against Ukraine is having serious effects on the neighboring Republic of Moldova. In a real spirit of solidarity and upholding European values, Moldova is actively supporting those fleeing Ukraine, hosting an important number of refugees per capita. This represents a major logistical challenge for the Moldovan government, and our support from the EU and from the member states is necessary. The war also destabilized the energy market and with it Moldova's energy security. That, combined with record inflation and the drought, made the situation even more difficult for Moldova. Despite these challenges, the Moldovan government is strongly committed to delivering on its clear reform goals, notably as regards to its judicial reform, public administration reform, and the modernization of the economy to benefit the people of Moldova. As the rapporteur stated on the justice reform, the country took decisive steps, including constitutional reforms, to improve the functioning of the judiciary. Moldova has also made significant progress in the freedom of the media, passing a special law to combat fake news and propaganda. In regards to the political criteria, Moldova has a solid foundation in place to reach the stability of institutions guaranteeing democracy, the rule of law, human rights, and respect and protection of minorities. The parliamentary nature of the democracy has also been confirmed by recent competitive elections at parliamentary and presidential level, as the PACE delegation of observers such as myself were able to witness. We continue to support the Republic of Moldova on its path towards European integration. Moldova is an European state committed to respecting and promoting the values on which the European Union is founded. We know that Chișinău's road ahead on the path to European integration is not an easy one, and completing these stages will lead to the consolidation of the rule of law and to a modern, prosperous society based on European modern values, and we will be there for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the ECDA group, I call Mr. Goncharenko.
Thank you. First of all, on behalf of Ukraine and Ukrainians, I want to say thank you to Moldova, Mulțumesc, for all support Ukraine received and Ukrainians during this war of aggression that Russia started against us. Almost 500,000 Ukrainian externally displaced people came through Moldova, and many of them stayed in the most difficult times, especially people from my native city of Odessa. We will never forget it, and that is very important for us. Also, we see how Moldova is moving now actively to the free world, and we are absolutely happy with this. But who is unhappy? It's Russia, the country which tries to influence Moldova too. Russia is attacking Moldova, paying Moldovan politicians, pro-Russian politicians, making some rallies inside the country, making a house, attacking in propaganda, weaponizing energy, blackmailing with energy. Certainly for Russia it was one of the aims to take Odessa, to cut Ukraine from the Black Sea, and then to attack Moldova, to connect with already occupied by Russia Transnistria. That was their aim. They failed because of Ukrainian army, but they tried to destabilize Moldova right now. But I am sure Moldovan people will never let do this. And together, how now is the decision that Ukraine and Moldova are candidates to European Union together. Together we will move ahead. Together we will become members of European Union. I believe in NATO in future as a real part of free world. That is very important. And that is also a lesson to other countries. Unfortunately, there is one more country which we love with all our heart like Moldova. It's Georgia, country which we love, but country, unfortunately, the government of which, after almost 1 year of the war, couldn't take the side in this war. They are, I can tell you, Ukraine 30 times addressed them with, please, give us, not to give it, sell us weaponry. No answer. Even after in 2008, Ukraine was helping Georgia when Russia attacked Georgia. When we are saying to them, let's join our peaceful initiatives, no answer. No answer. And now they are thinking about even opening a new direct lines with the Russian Federation, not like the whole free world making sanctions against Russian Federation, but Georgian government is going another way. And we see the results. Today, Georgia has not received the status of candidate to European Union. That is very worrying for me because we love Georgia. We believe that future of Georgian people is in Europe, like Moldovan people, like Ukraine, being part of free world. Sakartvelo Gaumardžios, Viva Moldova, Slava Ukraini.
Thank you, Mr. Goncharenko. And lastly, for the UEL group, Madam Castel.
Thank you, President. First of all, let me thank the co-rapporteurs for their excellent work. Dear colleagues, as it is stressed in the report, Moldova is a country that faced serious challenges since the last monitoring report, mainly three. The first is the refugee crisis. More than 700,000 refugees from Ukraine crossed the country, and around 90,000 remained in. The second one is the energetic crisis with one of the highest energy prices in Europe. And the third is the economic consequences of the war. But under our point of view, the monitoring report is too enthusiastic and positive towards the government achievements. There's still a lot to be done to fulfill all the commitments. The democratic institutions are still not functioning properly. The corruption is still a big issue, and its fight in state institutions remains a big challenge. There is a lack of progress in judiciary reform, including the prosecutor's office. The way how the former prosecutor general was removed raises serious concerns. Moldovan society, indeed, doesn't trust these reforms. Many Venice Commission's recommendations are not taken into consideration. The new electoral code was adopted with no proper debate and with no consensus. There are reasonable questions concerning the media freedom. 6 television channels were banned recently by a decision of the State of Emergency Commission. This is a clear step back in freedom of speech and pluralism in Moldovan media. The State of Emergency Commission shouldn't be used to reduce the fundamental rights and liberties and to substitute the parliament or the government. The growing influence and rights of the secret services are also concerning. Their power are planned to be expanded under a draft law. This Information and Security Service can update by itself the sanctions list against Moldovan citizens. We do believe, colleagues, that the monitoring process of Moldova must go on. It's for what I exposed that we believe that it's of utmost importance to follow up closely the future local elections, the state of the rule of law, and the democratic freedoms. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And that brings to an end the speakers from political groups. We move on to the main part of the speakers list. And I start with Christophe Lacroix. La parole est à vous.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Président, donc, mes chers collègues, je voudrais d'abord remercier les rapporteurs et spécialement Pierre-Alain et saluer les progrès effectués par la République de Moldova, mais je voudrais quand même apporter des nuances dans le concert des louanges que j'ai entendues, parce que j'interviendrai ici en tant que rapporteur général sur les LGBTI. Et je voudrais rappeler que notre Assemblée est très claire sur les questions de genre et appelle ses États membres à, je cite, « développer des procédures rapides, transparentes et accessibles fondées sur l'autodétermination ». L'expert indépendant des Nations Unies sur ces matières a également recommandé que la reconnaissance légale du genre soit fondée sur l'autodétermination, qu'elle soit une procédure administrative simple et qu'elle n'exige pas des demandeurs qu'ils remplissent des conditions abusives, notamment un certificat médical. Or, actuellement, la seule procédure de ce type disponible en Moldavie est pathologisée, c'est-à-dire que ça nécessite un certificat médical et requiert l'approbation d'un tribunal. En effet, la reconnaissance légale du genre n'est possible que sur la base d'un diagnostic de transsexualisme émis après un examen psychiatrique approfondi. Une intervention chirurgicale n'est pas nécessaire, mais après avoir obtenu le diagnostic, les demandeurs ont besoin d'une décision du tribunal. De plus, la loi actuelle régissant la reconnaissance légale du genre est une loi sur les documents d'état civil qui contient une seule disposition qui fait implicitement référence aux personnes transsexuelles et à leur droit à la reconnaissance légale de leur genre préféré, masculin ou féminin uniquement. La procédure actuelle en Moldavie est donc contraire aux normes internationales en matière de droits de l'homme et constitue un obstacle à un mécanisme rapide, transparent et accessible de reconnaissance légale du genre pour les personnes transsexuelles. Le gouvernement de Moldavie devrait donc commencer par rédiger une loi qui permettrait une reconnaissance légale rapide, transparente et accessible du genre pour les personnes transsexuelles sur la base de l'autodétermination et en accord avec la révision de la CIM 11 de l'OMS entrée en vigueur en janvier 2022 qui, dépathologise les identités trans dans tous les domaines de la vie. Lutter contre la discrimination à l'égard des personnes LGBTI est au cœur de la mission du Conseil de l'Europe et de l'Assemblée parlementaire du Conseil de l'Europe. Je souhaiterais donc qu'on y soit particulièrement attentif, même si je comprends et je sais que la République de Moldova, dans de nombreux domaines, comme l'a expliqué le rapporteur et comme les écrivent les deux rapporteurs, sont importants et doivent être, bien sûr, félicités pour cela. Je vous remercie.
Merci, monsieur. And now I turn to Mr. Popsoy.
Mr. Chair, honorable colleagues, I'd like to begin by thanking the rapporteurs for their excellent work, for their show of professionalism and fairness in evaluating the recent successes that Moldova has achieved. Despite the enormous suffering caused by the barbaric Russian aggression against Ukraine, but more importantly, thanks to the endless courage, determination, and sacrifice of the Ukrainian people, and in light of the generous support of the international community, Moldova is able to carry on. And not only is Moldova carrying on and providing support to the largest number of refugees per capita, being the small country with a big heart, but the country is also able to implement substantive reforms, first and foremost in the justice sector and combating corruption. There are already the first achievements of the vetting of the judiciary. Yes, there is robust sabotage from within and outside the system. There is attempts by pro-Russian forces and Russian intelligence attempts to destabilize Moldova. But Moldova will carry forward. And not only is Moldova succeeding in this cornerstone fundamental reforms, Moldova is succeeding across the board. In recent years, Moldova has improved 40 positions in the international ranking of freedom of the media by the Reporters Without Borders. Moldova is a leader in the world in reducing the gender gap, having one of the most active representation of women in politics. Moldova is doing significant improvements in combating corruption. And this year, or rather past year, Moldova has achieved the candidacy status to join the European Union. And the government and the parliament and the presidency and the entire society will be working diligently to hopefully start negotiations this year and turn the page on the suffering and the sorrow that the Soviet and the post-Soviet era entails. Moldovans, just like Ukrainians, just like Georgians, want to be part of the free world. This year, we also will be proudly hosting the European political community. The Republic of Moldova and President Sandu will be hosting the heads of state and government of the entire Europe. At the same time, I would like to thank again you, honorable colleagues, and the rapporteurs for this report, which is one of the best, if not the best, in the almost 30 years history. And we look forward, perhaps, in the upcoming years, to graduate the monitoring and go to the post-monitoring phase. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I give the floor to Mr. Gras.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Chers collègues, j'ai eu la chance à plusieurs occasions de visiter la République de Moldova et de me consacrer un petit peu à son histoire. Il nous suffit de revenir en arrière d'une décennie pour pouvoir dire que le pays a vécu une période mouvementée, à la fois politiquement et socialement. Un scandale impliquant plusieurs banques en 2014 et l'instabilité dans laquelle le pays a plongé de longue date ont mené en une défiance envers les politiques et les institutions étatiques. D'autres crises surgissent entre 2020 et 2021. Le Parlement se voit dissous et des élections anticipées doivent être tenues. De son côté, la population moldave revendique l'instauration d'institutions étatiques fonctionnelles, transparentes et conformes aux valeurs européennes que nous chérissons tous. Chers collègues, un changement de cap si radical et ambitieux ne peut se faire du jour au lendemain. Ce rapport synthétise les efforts qui ont déjà été réalisés. Il n'en est pas des moindres. Un nouveau code électoral, une révision constitutionnelle ciblant une dépolitisation du pouvoir judiciaire, des réformes et des démarches entreprises en matière de corruption et de criminalité. Bien sûr, il ne faut pas se leurrer. Les ingérences des mouvements de contestation et la corruption sont toujours présentes malgré tous ces efforts. Mais il faut déjà se réjouir des avancées faites et soutenir la République de Moldova dans ce développement vers une démocratie transparente et un état de droit digne de ce titre. Il en est de même pour les droits humains, pour lesquels des tendances positives sont également à dépeindre. Je pense ici au progrès fait au niveau de l'égalité des genres, par la ratification de la Convention d'Istanbul en 2022. Mais ici aussi, il s'agit maintenant de poursuivre ces efforts, un élan à maintenir aussi pour ce qui est des ingérences au niveau du travail journalistique et de la presse. Il faut à tout prix éviter une influence étatique excessive sur la population par le biais des médias. Depuis le début de la guerre russe en Ukraine, il me tient à souligner les efforts remarquables de la part de la République de Moldova pour apporter de l'aide aux réfugiés de guerre. Cette aide fait preuve d'un rapprochement manifeste et une volonté de s'aligner aux valeurs européennes de paix, de démocratie et de solidarité. De façon générale, le Luxembourg, mon pays, reconnaît le travail qui a déjà été fait jusqu'à présent et en juin 2022, notre Parlement avait invité le gouvernement par le biais d'une motion pour qu'il exprime son support aux aspirations européennes de la République de Moldova. Par conséquent, nous saluons la décision de l'Union européenne du 23 juin 2022 de lui accorder le statut de candidat à l'Union qui sera sans aucun doute bénéfique non seulement à la République de Moldova, mais également à notre communauté. La population moldave ne doit en aucun cas se sentir découragée. Sa motivation doit persister afin d'œuvrer pour un État ouvert, démocratique et fondé sur des valeurs justes et humaines. Un grand merci encore aux rapporteurs, Mme Libina, Engnere et M. Frides. Merci.
Merci, monsieur. Merci. Now I give the floor to Mr. Molajada. Is he still here?
I'm here.
Yes, there you are, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, people of Moldova express to the world what they want, electing young, dynamic president which choose a path of reforms, changing Moldova according to European standards and intensify accession process. Immediately, Moldova faced a lot of problems. Problem related to energy, problem related with very sophisticated technology, using oligarchs for destabilization situation in Moldova. Stop reforms, not allow, provide anti-corruption measures, and this situation, Moldova in very difficult situation because of war in Ukraine, flow of refugees, and I definitely believe that Moldova needs support. One of the forms of support is possible European sanctions and European criminal investigation regarding oligarchs, which freely are in Europe. Just the same situation happened in Azerbaijan when Russia said Ruben Vardanyan, he's a tricky guy who provides money laundering in Europe, laundering of dirty money of Russian oligarchs and bureaucrats. He came to Karabakh with this goal to start war again. And this oligarch situation also we faced in time in Ukraine when Medvedchuk was a puppet who tried to stop Ukrainian development toward Europe. Now a lot of people talking about here about Latchin corridor, but Ruben Vardanyan, Russian crook oligarch, every month passing this corridor, coming to Europe, and there were information about his involvement in corruption scandal in European Parliament. a lot of dirty money working against countries who would like to be free. And Moldova needs support. I told about the energy problems in this country. Azerbaijan now provides gas to Moldova because we are allies and we're members of GUAM organization, Georgia, Ukraine, Azerbaijan, Moldova, united in our struggle to be free, and signed in New York treaty about free economic zone between GUAM country. We will support our ally Moldova, and I ask our European colleagues, help to Moldova. Moldova deserves freedom.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Groza.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, in November 2020, Maya Sandu became the first female president of the Republic of Moldova, elected on a clear pro-European agenda. In July 2021, in the wake of a political and constitutional crisis, the President's Action and Solidarity Party won a majority in a snap parliamentary election for the first time in its history. The Republic of Moldova is governed by a stable parliamentary majority held by a single party, focused on integration in European Union. A series of actions and reforms were swiftly launched by the newly elected authorities to cleanse the system from its corrupt elements and put an end to the state-capture but Russia aggression against Ukraine. On February 24, raised considerable challenges. This conflict has been added to the energy crisis and management of COVID-19 pandemic that has disrupted economic cooperation with neighboring Ukraine and led to high inflation rates around 30%, that directly affect the population of the Republic of Moldova. At the same time, the war caused a new refugee crisis. Ukraine families say that the Republic of Moldova successfully managed the refugee crisis when its citizens opened the doors of their homes to host Ukrainian families who fled and are still fleeing the war. Following the outbreak of war, the Moldovan authorities applied on 3rd of March 2022 together with Ukraine and Georgia to the European Union. In this context, a National Commission for European Integration was created and adopted an action plan for meeting the conditions linked to Moldova states as European Union candidate country. The regional context, the measurable pressures generated by the Russian Federation on energy matters, and when the consequences of the war have placed the Republic of Moldova in a very difficult situation, which the authorities are trying to manage with calm and resilience. In this context, we welcome the close and fruitful cooperation of Council of Europe, in particular the Assembly and the Humanitarian Committee, as well as the Venice Commission with the Moldovan authorities. The current authorities of the Republic of Moldova are firmly determined to make every effort to succeed in promoting and implementing the reforms to make possible the irreversible accession and integration in the European Union. Only on the great family of Europe we see our future and security. Thank you.
Thank you. Now the next speaker will have to be the last speaker, and I call Zeynep Yildiz from Turkey.
Thank you, dear President, dear colleagues. Turkey does not have a common border with the Republic of Moldova, as you all know. Yet we always consider Moldova as our neighbor and support its territorial integrity and sovereignty. We also support Moldova's commitment to European integration and welcome the granting of the European Union candidate country status of Moldova. As stated in the report, Moldova carries out a reform process to restore the independence of judiciary, trust in the state institutions, and fight against corruption. We commend the country's efforts to consolidate its institutions and reform process. Nevertheless, I believe it will benefit Moldova to cooperate more with European institutions in the ongoing reform process. Although the European Union accession negotiations will contribute to this process, cooperation with the Council of Europe institutions should be maintained in order for the reforms to be implemented on the basis of Council of Europe standards. All in all, Moldova's deeper integration with European institutions will help to improve welfare and well-being of Moldovan people, including our kinsmen Gagavusians. The Gagavuz people constitute a special bridge between Turkey and Moldova. We always want to see a prosperous Gagavuzia in a strong Moldova. We would like the Gagavuz people to preserve their cultural identity and territorial autonomy while they are fully integrated with Moldova. And this can only be achieved through an inclusive approach by Moldovan authorities. With regard to the Romanian language learning, an issue addressed in the report in relation with the reforms in the field of democracy, I would like to inform you that Turkey always encourages Gagavuz people to learn Romanian and Gagavuz Turkish. There are projects such as building of an educational complex undertaken by the Turkish Cooperation and Coordination Agency in Comrat in line with this understanding. In conclusion, I wish the upcoming elections this year for the office of Başkan of Gagavuzia will bring the best results for building trust and strengthening the relations between Chisinau and Comrat. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Yildiz. I must now, unfortunately, interrupt the list of speakers. The speeches of members on the speakers list who have been present during the debate but have not been able to speak may be given to the table office for publication in the official report. I remind colleagues that typewritten text can be submitted electronically if possible, no later than 4 hours after the list of speakers is interrupted. And I now call Mr. Frides. Vous avez 3 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Vice-président. Je remercie tous les intervenants dans ce débat et j'aimerais juste rappeler certaines petites choses et faire quelques réponses. Notre ancienne collègue de France, Josette Durieux, avait en fait parlé de la Moldavie comme un pays entre deux mondes, un pays qu'elle décrivait dans son livre, frappé par une grande instabilité, par des changements politiques récurrents et toujours cette difficulté à savoir si elle allait se tourner vers l'Occident ou plutôt vers la Russie. Elle a fait actuellement des choix clairs et face aux difficultés que vit ce pays, à une certaine pauvreté, à des défis, à des difficultés, vraiment ce pays mérite notre solidarité, l'aide internationale, rien que par exemple par rapport à l'effort fait par rapport aux migrants. Oui, Madame Castel, le monitoring doit continuer, c'est important, mais il faut véritablement tenir compte d'où l'on vient. Quand j'ai entendu parler de ce pays la première fois, il y avait en fait un sport national dans ce pays, c'était pour les députés le changement de groupe parlementaire. Sur une centaine, il y en avait 30 qui changeaient en 1 ou 2 ans, et souvent il y avait des histoires de corruption. Des défis énormes ont été relevés par le nouveau gouvernement, mais tout n'est pas effectivement réalisé. Il reste de la corruption, il reste des résistances à l'interne, mais il y a la volonté véritablement d'améliorer les choses, et M. Grasse avant l'a bien expliqué. Alors, il y a une grande responsabilité pour le parti, on va dire majoritaire, et grâce à la Commission de Venise, grâce aux co-rapporteurs, grâce quelque part à tout l'appui qu'on peut leur apporter, l'idée c'est vraiment de leur permettre de construire un État fort en respectant toutes les règles essentielles de l'État de droit. Oui, c'est vrai, des chaînes de télévision ont été fermées. Nous étions en période de guerre, d'état d'urgence. Le pays est quand même très fragile, il n'a pas d'armée, il est plutôt mal placé géographiquement, avec la Transnistrie où en fait il y a 2 ou 3 000 soldats russes. Et en fait, il y avait des chaînes russes qui diffusaient à la population en partie russophone du Moldova des fake news, des nouvelles, comme effectivement on peut l'avoir entendu ici ou là. Et cette mesure, effectivement, elle est dommageable, mais d'un autre côté, y avait-il d'autres choix? J'aimerais terminer en expliquant à M. Lacroix que le thème dont il a parlé concernant les LGBTI n'a en fait pas été discuté dans nos différentes visites, mais que c'est un sujet que je m'engage à discuter avec les autorités moldaves lors d'une prochaine visite. Pour terminer, encore une fois, merci pour vos différentes interventions. La Moldavie, le peuple moldave sont des gens très attachants et encore une fois, c'est pour moi un plaisir, un honneur d'accompagner ce pays, ce peuple, dans une évolution vers plus de démocratie et idéalement un rapprochement avec l'Europe. Merci.
Thank you. Merci, Monsieur Frides. Does the Vice Chairperson of the committee wish to speak? If so, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I would like to thank and congratulate our rapporteurs, Mr. Fides and Ms. Libina Ingene, for the report submitted today. Our committee has been following the latest development in the country with great attention. The rapporteurs have witnessed the dramatic contemporary development while preparing this monitoring report. The outbreak of the war in neighboring Ukraine has had dramatic effects on the country. Therefore, this report is not an ordinary report. I would like to thank the rapporteurs for taking into account the impact of the war on Moldova, including the massive arrival of refugees, the energy crisis, the geopolitical pressure and hybrid war against Moldova, and their consequences of the functioning of democratic institutions. The report makes an accurate description of the consequences of the war and the commitments of the authorities to continue the reforms despite their difficult circumstances. I would also like to extend my gratitude to the Moldovan people for their generous hospitality when they accepted nearly 100,000 refugees. In 2020 and 2021, the Moldovan people have expressed a clear choice in favor of the European integration. The report describes the reforms launching in area which are the key for the role of rule of law and democracy. And at the same time, it illustrates the challenges still faced by the country. As a Vice President of the Monitoring Committee, I would like to commend the excellent cooperation of our rapporteurs and the authorities and the active role of the Moldovan delegation in our committee. Today, the report which is submitted to you is a result of the committed work of our rapporteurs. Despite the dramatic changes of circumstances, the rapporteurs have elaborated a comprehensive report and proposed a detailed draft resolution unanimously approved by the Monitoring Committee. Dear colleagues, I would like to thank again our rapporteurs, but also our Moldovan colleagues, both from the majority and from the opposition, for their constructive attitudes to the committee. The Council of Europe is based on cooperation, and we appreciate the important support of the Council of Europe to the democratic developments of the country. I invite you to support this draft resolution. By doing so, you will express the support of the Assembly to the Republic of Moldova to strengthen in democratic and human rights-oriented reforms. Thank you very much for the attention.
Thank you very much. The Committee on Monitoring has presented a draft resolution. This can be found in document 15680, to which no amendments have been tabled. So we will now proceed directly to the vote on the draft resolution, for which a simple majority is required. The vote is now open. The vote is now closed, and I call for the results to be displayed. The draft resolution in document 15680 is approved. Thank you very much.
Just for the technical reason. So my vote today for the resolution 2482, legal and human rights aspects of the Russian Federation aggression against Ukraine, was not considered. So I want to fix my position that I was in favor to vote for this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for putting your position on the record. Obviously, the vote cannot be retaken, but members have heard your view. Thank you very much.
Dear colleagues, the final item of business this afternoon is a current affairs debate on addressing the humanitarian consequences of the blockade of Latchin corridor. Speaking time in this debate is limited to 3 minutes sharp for all members except the first speaker, chosen by the Bureau, who is allowed 7 minutes. In the debate, I first call Mr. Pierre-Alain Frides. Pierre-Alain, vous avez 7 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le corridor de Latchin est une bande de territoire d'environ 5 km de largeur qui relie sur 65 km la frontière arménienne au territoire dénommé Nagorno-Karabakh ou Artsakh par l'Arménie et Karabakh par l'Azerbaïdjan. Il s'agit d'un endroit stratégique qui a été l'objet de dispositions particulières lors des tractations qui ont suivi les combats de 2020. L'accord tripartite du 9 novembre 2020 fixait à son article 6 l'obligation faite à l'Azerbaïdjan, qui avait le contrôle de cet endroit, de, je cite, « garantir la sécurité des personnes et des véhicules se déplaçant dans les 2 directions ». Un blocus de ce territoire a débuté le 12 décembre dernier lorsque des ressortissants de l'Azerbaïdjan ont bloqué la seule route reliant ce territoire habité par quelques 120 000 Arméniens à l'Arménie, une route vitale pour cette population. Le blocus se situe dans une zone qui se trouve sous la responsabilité de la mission de maintien de la paix des forces russes. Pour préparer la présente intervention, outre des lettres explicatives des 2 parties, je me suis basé sur le texte d'une décision de la Cour européenne des droits de l'homme qui a décidé, le 21 décembre 2022, de mesures provisionnelles demandant au gouvernement de l'Azerbaïdjan de prendre toutes les mesures à leur disposition pour assurer le libre passage à travers le corridor de Latchin des personnes sérieusement atteintes dans leur santé et nécessitant un traitement médical en Arménie ou pour les personnes bloquées sur la route sans abri ou moyen de subsistance. La question à l'origine de cette situation, selon la lettre que m'a adressée M. Seydov, repose sur la demande formelle début décembre par le gouvernement de l'Azerbaïdjan d'interrompre l'exploitation jugée illégale de mines dans le Haut-Karabakh, exploitation qui entraînerait des dégâts à l'environnement. Cette demande du gouvernement azéri serait restée sans suite et cela aurait causé, selon les propos de la lettre de M. Seydov, une légitime indignation de citoyens azéris écologistes qui, depuis le 12 décembre 2022, ont débuté spontanément, selon lui, une manifestation pacifique pour empêcher l'utilisation de cette route à des fins abusives. Dans le terme abusif, la délégation azérie englobe également l'envoi de munitions et de mines vers le Karabakh par les Arméniens. Et le camp azéri de nier toutes les accusations d'un quelconque blocage total de la route. Les véhicules de soins passeraient sans problème, de même que 40 à 50 véhicules quotidiennement dans les 2 sens pour notamment transporter de la nourriture ou autres biens de première nécessité. Les besoins humanitaires essentiels seraient ainsi assurés. La situation serait profondément différente selon les informations fournies par le camp arménien qui considère qu'il existe un vrai blocus organisé par de pseudo-manifestants utilisant cette question minière comme un prétexte. Selon eux, tout aurait été orchestré par le pouvoir de Bakou. Selon leur version, le gouvernement d'Azerbaïdjan aurait bloqué l'importation quotidienne de plusieurs centaines de tonnes de biens essentiels, dont des biens de première nécessité, de la nourriture, des médicaments tels l'insuline, du carburant, des produits régulièrement importés dans le Karabakh depuis l'Arménie. La situation serait sérieuse et la crise humanitaire s'aggraverait de jour en jour. L'action des services sociaux et l'accès aux soins de santé seraient entravés, vu les moyens qui manquent, avec la mise en danger des plus vulnérables, jeunes et vieux, et des souffrances humaines qui tendent à se généraliser. La pénurie de nourriture et d'autres biens deviendrait de plus en plus perceptible avec l'apparition de coupons de rationnement. Par ailleurs, durant ces mois de froid hivernal, on assisterait à des coupures temporaires du gaz et de l'électricité, aggravant encore sérieusement la situation des populations concernées. Des milliers d'enfants sont privés de leur droit à l'éducation, leurs écoles étant fermées car sans chauffage. Plus de 1000 personnes seraient bloquées le long de cette route dans l'impossibilité de rentrer chez eux. Par ailleurs, des centaines d'enfants seraient séparés de leur famille. On avance des perturbations dans l'accès aux télécommunications et Internet. Par moments, la population du Haut-Karabakh serait coupée de toute communication avec le monde extérieur. Selon les Arméniens, le corridor serait aujourd'hui toujours fermé. Seuls quelques véhicules du CICR pourraient transporter un nombre limité de patients très malades vers l'Arménie. Pour les Arméniens, il s'agit clairement d'une violation des accords de paix tripartites du 9 novembre 2020 qui devaient assurer une complète liberté de circulation des citoyens, des véhicules et des biens entre l'Arménie et le Karabakh à travers le corridor de Latchin. À noter que la responsabilité de l'application de cet accord reposerait normalement sur les forces de maintien de la paix russes qui seraient restées complètement passives face à cette situation. Alors, deux versions, comme toujours diamétralement opposées, on en a l'habitude. Mais il semble y avoir eu, et sans doute aujourd'hui encore, un blocus du corridor de Latchin. Outre la prise de position claire de la Cour européenne des droits de l'homme du 21 décembre dernier, dont j'ai déjà parlé, de multiples interventions internationales se sont succédées. Le blocus a été évoqué au Conseil de sécurité des Nations Unies le 20 décembre 2022, avec des prises de position claires des représentants de la France, du Royaume-Uni, de la Chine, de la Russie, de l'Irlande, de l'Inde, du Brésil, de la Norvège. Le message de ces différents pays a été unanime. La réouverture du corridor pour éviter une escalade et créer une crise humanitaire est indispensable. Notons par ailleurs, entre bien d'autres, la déclaration du 16 décembre du porte-parole du département d'État des États-Unis qui s'inquiète de la fermeture du corridor qui pourrait engendrer de graves conséquences humanitaires et appelle l'Azerbaïdjan à rétablir la libre circulation dans le corridor de Latchin. Finalement, le Parlement européen a adopté le 19 janvier une résolution sur la violation des droits humains au Haut-Karabakh, demandé la levée du blocus, la mise en place d'une enquête humanitaire de l'ONU et de l'OSCE et dénoncé l'inaction des forces russes de maintien de la paix. Toute la communauté internationale s'est mobilisée sur ce sujet avec une position unanime. Alors le but aujourd'hui, l'espoir que l'on peut formuler, c'est une normalisation sans délai de la situation avec des mesures efficaces pour établir les possibilités de déplacement dans le corridor de Latchin et résoudre au plus vite les problèmes d'approvisionnement en nourriture, médicaments et moyens énergétiques et ainsi éviter un drame humanitaire. La balle est dans le camp des autorités d'Azerbaïdjan et deux possibilités s'offrent à ces autorités. Soit, sans délai, elles apportent la preuve de la fatuité des allégations proférées, pas uniquement avec des mots, mais sur la base d'une observation internationale indépendante sur place, ces tout prochains jours selon des modalités à discuter. L'idéal serait d'autoriser l'accès du corridor aux co-rapporteurs des deux pays en litige. Soit, autre possibilité, en procédant sans délai à la levée du blocus existant. Il serait très problématique de devoir constater dans quelque temps que cette situation aura débouché sur un drame humanitaire. Les autorités azerbaïdjanaises devraient alors en répondre. Merci pour votre attention.
Merci à vous, Pierre-Alain. Now, in the debate, I first call the 5 speakers on behalf of the political groups. And first speaker is Madam Boriana Aberg from Sweden on behalf of the EPP group. Boriana, you have the floor, 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, it is with great sadness that we once again are debating about the humanitarian crisis in Nagorno-Karabakh. Yet again, the debate is at the bottom of the agenda and very few of the members of the Assembly are present. The suffering of of 120,000 people of Nagorno-Karabakh deserve greater attention. But before anything else, they deserve that their fundamental human rights are respected. It's not a question of territorial integrity. It's not a question about Armenia or about Azerbaijan. It's a question of human rights. Since the Latchin corridor, the only road that links Nagorno-Karabakh and Armenia was blocked by so-called environmentalists on December 12, a humanitarian crisis has struck its residents. There is a shortage of food, and a Russian stamp-based system has since been introduced. Medicine, including for children and persons with long-term medical conditions, are largely unavailable. Furthermore, during the blockade, the gas supplies were disrupted on 2 occasions. In that also lies the problem of electricity supply after Azerbaijan damaged the only high-voltage power line which supplies Nagorno-Karabakh. The line is not restored yet, as the Azerbaijani forces did not allow reparation teams. People in Nagorno-Karabakh are freezing and starving in the darkness. This darkness also covers informational darkness, since one internet cable was cut by so-called activists on the 12th of January. Recently, the US Secretary of State Blinken spoke with Azerbaijan's President Aliyev to urge an immediate reopening of the Latchin corridor. Prior to that, the European Parliament approved a resolution in which it urged Azerbaijan to release Armenian prisoners of war, to withdraw its troops from Armenia's sovereign territory, and to open the Latchin corridor. The Secretary General of Council of Europe, the Commissioner of Human Rights, and the rapporteurs of Azerbaijan and Armenia also made statements about the blockade. Evidently, there is significant international pressure, further strengthened by the fact that the European Court of Human Rights indicated interim measures to Azerbaijan on this subject. Unfortunately, Azerbaijan has decided to ignore these pleas. Hence, I want to ask, what actions need to be taken in order for Azerbaijan to fulfill its commitments as a member of the Council of Europe?
Thank you very much, Boriana. Thank you very much. I have to be a bit strict, so to give as many possible speakers the floor. Prochain orateur est Monsieur Bertrand Bouix de la France. Il parle au nom du groupe ADLE. Bertrand.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Mes chers collègues, ce débat d'actualité, il est essentiel. En effet, le corridor de Latchin est une ligne de vie pour la population du Haut-Karabakh. Cette voie, reliant le territoire à l'Arménie, permet l'accès et les approvisionnements du Haut-Karabakh. Conformément à la déclaration trilatérale du 9 novembre 2020, la République d'Azerbaïdjan s'est engagée à garantir la sécurité des déplacements des personnes, des véhicules et des marchandises le long du corridor de Latchin dans les 2 directions. À la suite d'une initiative française, la communauté politique européenne, qui s'est réunie pour la première fois à Prague le 6 octobre dernier, en présence des premiers ministres arméniens et présidents azerbaïdjanais, a permis des avancées, notamment le déploiement d'une mission d'observation de l'Union européenne. Le Conseil de l'Europe, bâti sur le socle des droits de l'homme et des libertés fondamentales, doit pouvoir participer à ces missions d'observation. En effet, se rendre compte par nous-mêmes de l'état de la situation sur place me semble absolument nécessaire. En tout état de cause, d'une part, les entraves mises à la circulation sur le corridor entraînent des conséquences humanitaires graves pour la population locale. Je n'ai besoin ici de décrire les effets du manque de nourriture, de médicaments ou de combustible de chauffage. D'autre part, le corridor ne peut être utilisé pour encourager les départs sans retour de la population arménienne du Haut-Karabakh, du fait d'une vie devenue impossible dans cette enclave. Toute évolution sur le terrain ne peut résulter que d'un dialogue politique entre les 2 parties. Mon pays, la France, en tant que membre du groupe de Minsk,
reste pleinement engagé en soutien aux négociations en cours à la suite des rencontres de Bruxelles, Prague et Washington. Quant à nous, pays européens et singulièrement les pays membres de l'Union européenne, nous devons tenir les deux bouts de cette corde. Maintenir la coopération avec l'Azerbaïdjan est certes important, mais tout accord, aussi nécessaire soit-il pour les deux parties, ne doit pas nous faire oublier que notre continent est d'abord une communauté d'esprit, une communauté qui en partage le respect des droits de l'homme, des principes démocratiques, des libertés fondamentales et notamment de la liberté d'expression. Cette liberté doit être garantie à la population azerbaïdjanaise, mais également arménienne, quel que soit son lieu de résidence. J'appelle donc les pays de notre continent à un engagement fort pour régler ce conflit qui est un peu oublié, mais qui a cependant déjà trop duré. Merci.
Merci à vous, Bertrand. Now we are going to listen to Madam Jill Mortimer from the United Kingdom, and she speaks on behalf of the European Conservatives. Jill, you have the floor.
I'm deeply saddened to hear that hundreds of people have died in and around Nagorno-Karabakh in recent months, and that the situation there is degrading further. I understand that the origins of the conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia in this region can be traced back almost a century, rekindled by the fall of the Soviet Union and boiling over into two terrible wars in the last 30 years. But what have these wars achieved? They've not yielded anything like a permanent settlement or a positive relationship between the countries. Even the prisoners of war are unreturned. If these countries want to live at peace with each other as good neighbours, they must find a way to talk to each other with honesty and in good faith. I call upon the governments of Azerbaijan and Armenia to engage with the efforts of the OSCE to secure peace and stability. What we have now is a slow march into a humanitarian disaster that we must avert. Regardless of their motives, the protesters blocking the Latchin corridor are only helping to worsen the growing crisis. I urge all parties to the trilateral statement of the 9th of November 2020 to reaffirm that the Republic of Azerbaijan shall guarantee safe movement of people, vehicles and cargo in both directions along the Latchin corridor. This is the key to keep the situation within the framework of the rules-based international order, as opposed to slipping back into further chaos and conflict. Any movement in that direction must be stopped. It is unthinkable that this region will enter into a further period of violent conflict, and what will happen to those who will pay the price if this happens. I urge Armenia and Azerbaijan to save their people from future further catastrophe. For people to live as neighbours tomorrow, they must act as friends now. I am in no doubt that rights and wrongs have been committed and suffered by both sides, but the only way to protect the innocents who will suffer the terrible and inevitable harms of conflict is by reconciliation and a willingness to move forward, drawing a line and creating a positive narrative. The first step is the reopening of the Latchin corridor. However, let me be clear. Reconciliation is a two-way street, and the corridor must be used for good intention only, the legitimate movement of people, goods and humanitarian aid, and not used as a cover for the movement of contraband, military or arms. Nothing can be gained from more agitation. Further violence begets further hatred, deeper resentment and a bleaker future for both countries. Let the opening of the Latchin corridor be a new beginning, a new chapter in sincere and honest negotiations to suture these wounds. Let us seize the opportunity to build a future where Armenians and Azeris can live peacefully as neighbours.
Thank you very much, Jill. Now we are going to listen to Mr. George Katrougalos from Greece, and he speaks on behalf of the Unified European Left. George?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. When we were discussing the situation in Kosovo, I mentioned the old saying that the Balkans have been the powder keg of Europe. Caucasus risks to be another area that could be explosive in the years to come for similar reasons. Existence of minorities, disputed territories. We are not discussing here, of course, the geopolitical aspects of the conflict, just the humanitarian, But we must have in mind that in all situations, respect of international legality and what has been already agreed is fundamental. Here we have also the particularity that the facts are also disputed. The Azeri side denies there is a blockade. It is not meaningful to discuss if we do not have an agreement to the facts. And here I think that we can easily agree to the fact that blockade exists. The possibility of some vehicles of the Red Cross to carry some patients at life-threatening situation does not mean that the corridor is open. And the proof for that is that all sides that have a possibility to have a direct, let's say, understanding of the situation, like the United States or France, have already condemned this blockade. Our rapporteur has reminded us the harsh criticism of the American foreign minister, who cannot be accused to be one-sided or that he wants to promote the national interests of the one or the other side. And we have again, as previous speakers have said, also allegations that other aspects that guarantee a normal life to the citizens of Nagorno-Karabakh, like the provision of gas and electricity, are now blocked. So, my proposal is to endorse what the European Parliament has already endorsed. First of all, to condemn the blockade. It is self-evident. Then to ask all parties, and especially now Azerbaijan, because this is the party who seems not to implement the trilateral statement of the 9th November 2020, to fully respect it. And also to ask both parties, not just to demonstrate restraint, but also to fully respect international legality. And also what has been agreed till far. For instance, the statement of Minsk Group co-chairs of the 15th of November. And also this organization can be a forum of reconciliation and not just a confrontation between the two countries involved. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, George. And now the last speaker on behalf of the political groups is Mr. Konstantinos Efstasiou from Cyprus, and he speaks on behalf of the group of Socialists, Democrats and Greens. Konstantinos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are cases when we must be clear, when humanitarian issues are involved, we have to be rigid. That is why we call on the Azerbaijani authorities to ensure freedom of security of movement along the Latchin corridor in accordance with the trilateral statement of 9 November 2020. Restrictions to freedom of movement in this strip of land are causing significant distress to the local population and has the potential to create a humanitarian crisis. Access and supplies to the Nagorno-Karabakh must be unconditionally restored, and Azerbaijan must honor the trilateral agreement and guarantee the safety of people, vehicles and goods moving along the corridor. This is the sole road connecting Armenia to Nagorno-Karabakh. As a result of the blockade, thousands of people are stranded and unable to reach their homes, including children. This alarming situation threatens to derail the fragile peace process and may well lead to a resumption of violence. This could have disastrous consequences, impacting not only people of Armenia and Azerbaijan, but the wider South Caucasus region and beyond. As member states of the Council of Europe, in accordance with our values and principles, we call upon the Azerbaijani authorities to immediately open the corridor and desist from any action that could fuel further tensions in an already volatile situation. I have personally visited Azerbaijan twice, and I have never been to Armenia. I can assure you that Azerbaijani people are gentle, polite, and tolerant. This is why I'm so frustrated with the situation in Latchin and the deliberate acts which seek to victimize amachos. Amachos is a Greek word for the people who do not carry arms and cannot defend themselves. That is a mother who cares for her children, the family man who cares for his parents, or the child that needs protection, food, and shelter. Victimized just because they are Armenians or Christians. After all, we all deserve a better future in Europe, and in the whole world worldwide, notwithstanding our ethnicity, nationality, language, or religion. Leaving people starving, freezing without medicine, electricity, water supply, nor dignity actually amounts to an act of genocide. One of the elements defining genocide is deliberately inflicting harsh conditions of life calculated to bring about the physical destruction of a group. Dear colleagues, we are at the tipping point of the genocide. Let us not victimize people in order to gain political terms or for reasons of national interest. Every single person in this world deserves to live in dignity and in full respect of their human rights. The message must be clear. Stop the Latchin blockade.
Thank you, Konstantinos. Next in the debate, I call Mr. Kimmo Kiljunen from Finland. Kimmo.
Mr. President, I would like to start to saying pity, pity, pity. Session after session, at the final days, we have the discussion about the desperate conflict between two nations, Azeris, Armenians, who have lived centuries close to each other, that there is a war, tensions, and problems. That is very pity. Now we do have the discussion about the potential major blockade of Latchin corridor and total blockade of the Nagorno-Karabakh as a whole. And obviously, if that is fully implemented, the blockade, there is a major humanitarian crisis, even catastrophe, which we will witness. So this is a very, very warning situation. Unfortunately, we hear contesting parties interpreting the situation totally differently. We will, and you will soon hear the interpretations and differences. We hear that the Latchin corridor is closed and no transport, including maybe a few ambulances, but no transport whatsoever. Nagorno-Karabakh is isolated also. Otherwise, the gas lines have been cut, the power lines have been also cut, etc., etc. Major problem, 120,000 people living in these type of conditions and isolation. That argument is there. And the other side is saying there is actually only control, that there will be no military traffic vis-a-vis from Armenia to Nagorno-Karabakh, otherwise no problems, supposed to be no problems. If there are problems, the problems are not Azeris. That's the argumentation, Azeris officials or even civic society people. The problems are Russians, Russian mafia, etc., etc. Even eco-activists have made the blockade there, etc. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. President, there's a total confusion. We have a confusion. My hope, my request is, let's have there an impartial international observation mission which observes the situation and verifies it. We with Boriana, we are ready. We are rapporteurs for Armenia. We are ready. I know also the rapporteurs for Azerbaijan are ready. We are ready to go in the region and assess the situation and tell you as much as we can know what are the real situation and facts. That I really ask that both parties would agree about that one. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Kimmo. Now we are going to listen to Mr. Ruben Rubinian from Armenia. Ruben, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to thank all of the speakers who spoke before me for speaking the truth. That's very important. The people in Nagorno-Karabakh may be freezing right now because of the blockade, but your words will certainly warm their hearts, because they will know they are not alone, even though Azerbaijan wants them to think they are alone and that nobody cares. But you show that people do care. Dear colleagues, I know conflicts tend to be complicated, but sometimes they are quite simple. We have a situation when Azerbaijan, the president of Azerbaijan, on November 9th of 2020, has signed under a paper which says the Latchin corridor should be under the control of peacekeepers, and the Republic of Azerbaijan guarantees the flow of cargo, people, vehicles from Armenia to Nagorno-Karabakh and the other way around through the Latchin corridor. Now we don't have this situation. This is already the 46th day when this road is blocked. And furthermore, there is no gas and there is no electricity because Azerbaijan has cut them off. Of course, as some of the speakers mentioned, Azerbaijan will deny this. And our Azerbaijani colleagues will start to bring arguments saying that first, there is no blockade, and second, they will start justifying the blockade, which according to them is not there, by the so-called eco-activists. And there is only one way to check this, dear friends. Let's suppose that there is some evil Armenian conspiracy, worldwide conspiracy, which has somehow managed to lie to everyone and to convince the Americans, the Russians, the French, the Iranians, the UK, the OSCE, the Council of Europe, the ECHR, that there is a blockade which actually doesn't exist. Okay, this means that Azerbaijan must agree that, in this case, this organization, PACE, should send a fact-finding mission to the Latchin corridor immediately. Because that would be the only way for our Azerbaijani colleagues to prove that we are making false accusations. And when I say we are making, I mean I, my Armenian colleagues, and all the other colleagues which are not Armenian and who spoke today. If our Azerbaijani colleagues do not agree to this, this means that they do actually have genocidal intent. Their intention is to rid Nagorno-Karabakh of its Armenian population, and this means that this organization should act accordingly and should take measures to prevent this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruben. Now we are going to listen to Mr. Zeki Hakan Sidali from Turkey. Zeki.
Thank you, Chair. Let me start by stating that the priority for all of us is that peace and stability should prevail in South Caucasus. As of 2020, we see that a new era of peace and dialogue has emerged. In the last 2 months, there's a new tension rising in the region. Here we have to deal with the issue from all points of view. Looking through a single and prejudiced angle, having double standards leads us to false judgments and unfair results. Today we are discussing the claims regarding the Latchin corridor. However, Azerbaijani parliamentarians have repeatedly stated that this is not the case, and there is no problem of access to food in the region. There is, however, a serious perception management problem. We should be very careful against any perception which might lead to violation of previous agreements. There is no benefit to any member of PACE to reverse the peace environment and normalization steps taken in the region. So who does benefit from such a behavior? We must ask this question to ourselves. Unfortunately, there are many confrontations, even war, around us. Here we should be talking about peace, not escalation. We must act on facts, not perceptions. The founding values of the Council of Europe tells us to act accordingly. Our real contribution should be to encourage two delegations to sit together and find viable solutions to their bilateral issues. During my 5 years in PACE, I witnessed that Azerbaijani delegation has taken necessary and bold steps committed to the values of the Council. They realize that unnecessary confrontation only brings suffering and regression to the region and humanity. We should not disappoint this attitude. Whatever approach we choose with our words today, we will live it tomorrow. Either tension on one side or dialogue on the other. We must set an example for the whole world, especially for our own parliament. If we cannot achieve this in PACE, where freedom of speech and conscience of democracy prevails instead of political oppression, none of us can succeed anywhere. As Mevlana Celaleddin Rumi said, don't look at someone to find faults. If you look to find, you will. Learn the ingenuity of covering others' faults, then you will be complete and pure. These words are not for two delegations. This is also for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Zeki. Now I call on debate Mr. Kamal Yafarov from Azerbaijan. Kamal.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, if there is any blockade, it's definitely an artificial information blockade conceived by those powers who wanted to divert attention from the war in Ukraine. An advisor to the Ukrainian president, Mikhailo Podolyak, gave a public interview to the Moldovan public television. And in his interview, he said that the issues regarding Latchin corridor are being artificially inflated with an incorrect data on the size of local population in Khankendi with one specific intent to distract attention from the war in Ukraine. My colleagues, if there is a crisis, it's definitely a political one, and which was initiated with the Ruben Vardanyan plan. Ruben Vardanyan is Russian criminal oligarch. On 2019, European Parliament demanded an investigation into activities of the Ruben Vardanyan while he was the head of Troika Dialogue Investment Bank, which later was acquired by Sberbank of Russian Federation. Ruben Vardanyan was sent from Moscow with open and clear agenda. His first mission is to damage the peace process, damage the established contacts with local Armenians, and his second mission is, my dear Armenian colleagues, is to throw out the Pashinyan from the power and to become next Prime Minister of Armenia. And that's another reason of this information manipulation for the rivalry between Pashinyan and Ruben Vardanyan. My dear colleagues, if there is a humanitarian concern, it's definitely the concern of the 282 victims of landmines planted by Armenia. Armenians abusing Latchin corridor planted mines which was made by Armenia in 2021. A number of the cars are passing through the Latchin corridor in last 2 months are 3 times more than a member of this parliamentary assembly. Is more than 1,000 cars, including peacekeeping, International Red Cross, even including civil Armenian cars. But the number of the cars are passing through the Zengezur corridor is 0, which Armenia also promised to open interlateral agreement. My message is to the local Armenians in Khankendi. Throw out the Ruben Vardanyan, yourself for yourself. Our message to the Pashinyan, don't believe false promises made by France. The whole world already seen how the France kept his promise for Ukrainian cause. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kamal. Now I call on the debate Mr. Domagoj Hadjukovic from Croatia. Domagoj, you have the floor. But I do not see him with us, so next we call in the debate Mr. Vladimir Vardanyan from Armenia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now it is even more clear. Thank you, Mr. Jafarov. You actually said now a very important thing. You said that Nagorno-Karabakh is under the siege. And I would like to title my speech with the one Greek word from the Bible. Exodus, Exodus, Exodus. What you are demanding, it's an exodus of all Armenian population. This is your aim. Look, first, nobody of you speaking here, trying to say that there is no blockade, actually said something to prove that it's open. Let's understand what's going on there. If it is environmentalist, what is their demand? If we would like to regulate something, what is the demand of the government? If the problem in personalities, who is the problem? No. You may find a lot of different reasons, but the aim is the following. I absolutely agree with those who said that it is a clear genocidal intent in accordance with the Article 2, Paragraph C of the Genocide Convention to destroy fully or in part a group. That's the aim. Let's be very fair with each other. And let's try at least once to say it clearly to the public. Yes, our intent is to destroy Armenians. Unfortunately, I should state it clear. Latchin corridor is blocked. Otherwise, why ICRC is responsible for transferring persons from and to Nagorno-Karabakh? Latchin corridor is closed and people are starving and freezing. Latchin corridor is closed and 120,000 Armenians next door to the genocide. And if you're against all of this, let's agree. I am on behalf of each and every Armenian can state that we agree to admit any diplomatic, high rank, lower rank mission in Armenia in the Latchin corridor. Let's show to the world what is going on there. This is the demand of humanity. This is the demand of the values of the Council of Europe. Otherwise, you are just proving that you are organizing a genocidal intent.
Thank you very much. Next speaker in the debate is Madam Sena Çelik from Turkey. Sena, you have the floor.
Dear President, dear colleagues, we are all aware of the importance of ensuring freedom and security of movement along the Latchin corridor for humanitarian reasons, especially the transfer of medical aid, food, and essential goods. Azerbaijani authorities reject the allegations of the blockade of the corridor, referring to the daily use of the corridor by tens of vehicles of the peacekeeping contingent and the ICRC. Azerbaijani authorities and our Azerbaijani colleagues here also declare that Azerbaijan facilitates the humanitarian needs of all Armenian residents living in the region. It's important to emphasize that Azerbaijan is concerned about the illegal exploitation of mineral deposits in its territories and the resulting environmental consequences, as well as the abuse of the Latchin corridor for military purposes by Armenia, which constitutes violations of the trilateral statement. We should urge both parties to uphold the trilateral statement and work towards the common goal of finding a peaceful resolution. It's important to emphasize that the activities of the Russian peacekeeping contingent should not undermine the sovereignty of Azerbaijan. On the broader context, the recent developments have demonstrated once again the importance of addressing the root causes of the conflict and concluding a peace agreement to achieve sustainable peace between two countries. It's been over 2 years since the end of the Second Karabakh War. Azerbaijan liberated its lands from Armenian occupation and secured its territorial integrity and sovereignty. The war is over, but peace is yet to be finalized. Armenia has the chance to win the peace. It can achieve normalization with both Azerbaijan and Turkey by concluding a comprehensive peace treaty. As you know, there is an important ongoing normalization process between Turkey and Armenia. The international community should strongly support and accelerate this historic opportunity of peace and full normalization in the South Caucasus. Third parties' efforts should take into full account sensitivities of both parties. Third parties' efforts should also be mutually reinforcing and complementary. In conclusion, I would like to remind us all that the peace and stability in Karabakh is crucial not only for the people living there, but also for the stability and security of the entire region. Thank you.
Thank you, Sena. Now we are going to listen to Mr. Mikhail Popsoy from the Republic of Moldova.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to also take a moment and address the sensitive situation around the Latchin corridor in Azerbaijan. The Azerbaijani government has been appealing over a year to prevent the illegal activity in the territories where the Russian peacekeeping contingent is temporarily deployed. We have our own painful experience with the Russian military presence. The Kremlin refuses to be part of the solution, but rather chooses to be part of the problem, aiming to maintain the frozen conflicts instead of facilitating a lasting peaceful settlement. Clearly, Azerbaijan has legitimate objections and concerns when it comes to preventing the potential abuse of the Latchin corridor, which is intended for humanitarian purposes. On the other hand, the Armenian side also has raised concerns about the closure of the Latchin corridor and the creation of a humanitarian crisis in the region. They have claimed that the road is being closed and it is affecting the provision of necessary goods to the services to the local residents. It is important to note that both sides have valid concerns, and it is important to find a solution that respects the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Azerbaijan and at the same time ensures the provision of necessary goods and services to the local residents. That trilateral agreement signed by the parties should be taken into consideration while finding a peaceful solution. In conclusion, I hope that the Parliamentary Assembly could help in finding or facilitating a peaceful resolution to the situation. We hope that the Assembly will take into consideration the valid concerns of both sides and will work towards finding a solution that respects the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Azerbaijan and at the same time ensures the provision of necessary goods and services to the local residents. We hope that all parties involved will come to the negotiating table and work towards finding a peaceful resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mikhail. Now we are going to listen to Mr. Rafael Husseinov from Azerbaijan. Rafael.
Thank you, President. Dear colleagues. In November 2020, Azerbaijan solved the most complicated problem in its contemporary history. The lands of Azerbaijan, occupied for almost 30 years by Armenia, through the aid of its patronizing forces, were liberated. The opposite side, which was powerless on the battlefield against Azerbaijan, is now trying to create a false impression in the world community through various speculative tricks. One of such methods of political speculation is the hype created around the pseudo-problem called Latchin corridor. There is a well-known proverb in Azerbaijan: a lie has legs, but it would not walk. The Armenian propaganda machine claims that the Latchin corridor is closed. This is not true information, but a clear attempt to deceive the world community. The President of Azerbaijan officially announced this a few days ago at the International Economic Forum in Davos. The head of state stated that in order to confuse the international community, Armenia is engaged in manipulations related to the developments taking place on the Latchin road, claiming that the road is closed based on the false information. Nevertheless, this road is open for the passage of civilians and civilian goods, and the free movement of humanitarian goods is ensured through the International Committee of the Red Cross. Such coming and goings happen every day in the Latchin corridor. Therefore, it is completely unacceptable to make accusations against Azerbaijan based on the false words of Armenia about the alleged closure of the corridor or saving some unclean purposes. We firmly reject all this. On the other hand, Armenia has been keeping Nakhchivan, an integral part of Azerbaijan, in a state of complete blockade for 30 years. Azerbaijan has repeatedly raised the issue of opening the Zangezur corridor by Armenia. Nonetheless, Armenia does not do this. You blockade the region of Azerbaijan, do not open the Zangezur corridor, and demand that Azerbaijan turns the already opened Latchin corridor into a criminal corridor. And one more important question. Literally in January of this year, on the eve of our part session, at a panel meeting of the Davos Forum, President Ilham Aliyev unequivocally stated that Armenia is not responding to Azerbaijan's call to sign a peace agreement based on the fundamental principles of international law. Armenia is not willing to accept the offer of trilateral cooperation with Azerbaijan and Georgia. Azerbaijan invites the three Caucasian countries to unite their efforts in the areas of energy, transport, security, stability, and delimitation of borders. Georgia gladly agrees to this. Armenia says no. Well, in what language and in what style to speak with such an unconstructive party?
Thank you very much, Rafael. Now we are going to listen to Madam Nigar Aparataray from Azerbaijan. Nigar.
Thank you, Mr. President. I really hear and listen to all these speeches, and I feel so sorry that some members of this distinguished assembly forget about basic principles of international law. Dear colleagues, Latchin Road and Karabakh is a sovereign territory of Azerbaijan. I would like to remind you all this. I will speak about the road and about the story that Armenian side is trying to portray here. But before that, I would like to remind you something, which this assembly forgets all the time, is that 30 years ago, piece of territory of Azerbaijan has been occupied by Armenia, ethnically cleansed by Armenia, in an attempt to annexation of this part of Azerbaijan. They have put it into their constitution. Their declaration of independence says that Karabakh is a part of Armenia. Can you imagine? Moreover, it has been confirmed by their constitutional court. So one member state of this organization occupies the territory of another member state and tries to legitimize that. This is exactly what you should all be worried about. Dear colleagues, about Latchin Road. Latchin Road, there is no humanitarian catastrophe in Karabakh, and there is no risk of happening it in the future for a simple reason that it's open. Every day we have trucks going back and forth through the corridor. And Azerbaijan is providing all the access to food, to medicine, to pharma, to civilians, and to all this. The media drama about fake blockade is staged by a new separatist leader and notorious money launderer from Russia, a person who has no connections to Karabakh, who just came from nowhere, who has been put into sanctions list by Ukraine, who is a person subject to various investigations, Ruben Vardanyan. The reason why he and forces behind him do it is to maintain a lawless piece of land where arms are smuggled, shady business goes on, and resources are being barbarically exploited and stolen for personal gain. The residents of Karabakh are hostages to this ideology. Sooner this lawlessness stops and Karabakh integrates into Azerbaijani legal space, the better is for everyone and for all the states. This will contribute to stability and peace in the region and will limit the ability of external forces to meddle in the affairs of both Azerbaijan and Armenia. It will, in essence, make both countries stronger, and this is what I call both countries stronger, and I'm calling Armenian side to sit with Azerbaijan and to finally start thinking about peace deal. Dear colleagues, international community failed 20 years ago, long negotiations before war broke out in 2020. This time, it seems due to the lack of vision and proper information. There is a risk of a repeated mistake again. I would like to remind everybody that Karabakh is Azerbaijan and always will be by international law and by law and reality. And the sooner everyone gets it, the better it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. 3 minutes for everybody. And now we are going to listen to Mr. Haik Mamyanian from Armenia. Haik.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't think that 3 minutes is a possible period of time to answer all that false information provided by the representatives of Azerbaijan. But, dear colleagues, you all see the situation. The world, all the international organizations, many states tell that there is a blockade, there is a humanitarian catastrophe, and there are a few people in these chambers who try to state that it's not like that. Well, it's really hard to provide facts, as Azerbaijan is refused to provide possibility of the missions, any missions. But I don't know if it's a fact or not, but during this debate, I have read 4 or 5 posts on different groups on social media from the Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh. And they were about the discussion parents were asking, is there anyone who has baby food that I can borrow for my kids? This is a quite good fact for me. So, you know, you can think and say anything you want regarding the ammunition and some ridiculous things about that. But what's the meaning of blocking and stopping the gas pipeline, the electricity, the internet? You do think that there is a possibility to provide ammunition it's absurd, but anyway, by gas pipeline or by internet cables? No. The only reason that Azerbaijan is conducting this blockade is to make grounds for ethnic cleansing. And you know, I know why it is happening. The only explanation for that is Karabakh is only a territory for you, and it's homeland for us. You know, people in Nagorno-Karabakh do have a shortage of food, medicine, electricity, gas, but there are a few things that they definitely have. They do have honor, they do have a right to live on their soil, in their homeland, and they definitely have a right for self-determination. And please remember, I have said that very many times, and I will continue it till you understand that. Artsakh will never be part of Azerbaijan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now the last speaker in the debate will be Mr. Anton Gómez Reino from Spain. Anton, you have the floor.
Presidente. Creo que en un contexto geopolítico absolutamente convulso como el que estamos viviendo a nivel regional, pero a nivel también global, la comunidad internacional y particularmente una organización como esta no se puede permitir una situación de inestabilidad y de vulneración de derechos humanos como la que estamos viviendo desde hace años en el Cáucaso. No nos lo podemos permitir porque afectan a la estabilidad, porque afectan a la legalidad internacional y porque además afectan a los derechos humanos de la población de Nagorno-Karabaj. Pero nos encontramos en un contexto, y esto es lo relevante, en el que las organizaciones multilaterales de las que nos dotamos para fomentar el diálogo, la paz, la negociación, la estabilidad y la seguridad en Europa están en una crisis que bloquea esta situación y tantas otras. Y yo me pregunto, ¿no sería más sencillo evitar que se vulneraran los derechos humanos en el Alto Karabaj si tuviéramos organizaciones multilaterales realmente fuertes? ¿Nos podemos permitir un mapa geopolítico donde sea el más fuerte, en que cada coyuntura la aproveche para vulnerar el derecho internacional o los acuerdos bilaterales para generar nuevos status quo, como podemos estar viendo ahora mismo en el Cáucaso? Creo que es evidentemente que no. Necesitamos organizaciones multilaterales que acaben con acciones unilaterales y que fomenten la paz y la seguridad, sea esto en Nagorno-Karabaj, sea esto en Ucrania o en cualquier otro conflicto regional o global. En este sentido, creo que como reflexión general, que en el Consejo de Europa, como hemos visto hoy, se esté hablando sistemáticamente de envío de armas, creo que no es lo más productivo ni pertinente. Y creo que tengamos también una organización fundamental como la OSCE, completamente bloqueada por la situación, afecta en el Alto Karabaj y afecta en otros territorios. Y para acabar, me van a permitir, hablando de derechos humanos, no puedo evitar hablar de lo acontecido hoy en otro lugar, que tiene que ver con un Estado que es observador de este Consejo de Europa, que es Israel. Hoy en Jenin, hoy en Palestina, en Cisjordania, un ejército, el ejército israelí, ha atacado y ha asesinado a 9 personas, a 9 ciudadanos, a 9 personas de la sociedad civil palestina. Hoy un ejército, el israelí, como sucede cada día, ha atacado nada más y nada menos que un campamento de refugiados, el Jenin. Y quiero acabar simplemente diciendo hasta cuándo vamos a permitir que Israel, que es Estado observador de este Consejo de Europa, vulnere los derechos humanos de la población civil palestina. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Anton. That concludes the list of speakers. Mr. Seidov, point of order. A point of order is a point of order. Eh?
Yes, Mr. President. Point of order is a point of order. Now I can see how biased approach to
Sorry,
the discussion.
that is not a point of order.
No. I'm going to say a point of order. If during this so important discussion you are not able
to
present the speech for the leader of Azerbaijani delegation, this is exactly biased approach. If Armenians are able to present that,
now to sit down,
if the leader of Azerbaijani delegation is not able to do that, that's out of the reality and very biased approach.
And I will tell you that next time I will not tolerate that you abuse the rules. A point of order is about the order of the meeting. If you have something that is not correct, You should not abuse it for speaking times. I have to compliment you all. You have all observed the speaking time. That's very difficult in such a heated debate. So please do not abuse the rules with points of order, which are no points of order. And I mean this very serious, Mr. Sadov, because you are an experienced member of this assembly. We don't act in that way. This concludes the list of speakers. I remind you that at the end of a current affairs debate, the assembly is not asked to decide upon a text, but the matter may be referred by the Bureau to the responsible committee for a report. Many suggestions have been made during the debate. The Bureau will decide upon that. The Assembly will hold its next public sitting tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. with the agenda which was approved on Monday morning. The sitting is adjourned. I wish you a pleasant evening.